Okay. So, super impromptu, the Langoliers review, one of the least relevant things in uh, media, just in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, long story short, I think one of the watch later videos in my playlist came up at work last week. And it was a Langoliers review, which is a movie I've not seen in going on 30 years, almost a 30-year-old movie.
And
And
I think at best I'd heard of it, maybe, because the Langoliers sounds familiar. It gives me like the Sandlot vibes, though. Or it
the
gave me this,
name, the
yeah.
name, okay.
The name was like, oh, that's like with the Sandlot. It's some cute kids' baseball movie type thing.
It's not.
It's not.
In short, it is a two-part miniseries, which was all the rage on 90s television. I think it was ABC that aired it. I can't
What
remember.
was it? Rage? Was it Ragey?
Well, it was very ragey. There was Noah's Ark and the what was it? The Shining remake that was remade by
Oh, so the Langoliers wasn't the Rage. That format
no,
of
the miniseries.
miniseries.
But
10th Kingdom.
Tenth Kingdom, that's more of a mega series because that's like 10. Like it's not like 3 or 4 days.
It
It
is
was like 10 days.
10 hours
Yeah.
of film.
What was it? 10 hours? I thought it was 10 like episodes or
No,
setting or whatever
it might be. All I know
installments.
is it is 3 discs, and each disc is like 3.25 hour or 3.33 hour.
The Langoliers falls in this weird movie mini series middle ground, and part of that's because it's a novella, which novellas fall between like a short story and an
And not,
actual
yeah.
novel. So that's kind of interesting. So it was only 2 days. It was 2 hours each for a total of 3 hours of movie. Without commercials.
A novella. A Stephen King novella means he pinned it out in a day and a half instead of spending a whole week on it.
You hit record on this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure because it went black. I wasn't sure. Anyway, um,
It's still recording.
but yeah, it was like I remember like really trying. I can't remember. I don't know exactly how to word this, but I was really excited about it as a kid, and I had a parent who was very naysaying about
Yeah.
anything that wasn't like Jurassic Park quality. So we watched it.
Really?
Yeah, which is funny because the way she lives her life is like it's like Langolier's quality. uh, but yeah, no, I was like, yeah, I was watching this review and there were some spoilers, which I'd learned actually a few years ago on a different review I watched on it. This has been simmering apparently for a while. So finally Saturday night, we got the kids to sleep, and I was like, let's get buzzed and watch a really long, really boring, really bad movie. And spoilers
it's
for how we felt. It's not that
it's
bad.
not bad.
Like it's actually, and maybe a lot of this came from the fact that uh we we entered in thinking it was going to be bad, and then we were also high in Illinois, and
Mm.
but like it was engaging, and so like full disclosure, I put it on at work today to be like, okay, let's review all of this, and like it still held up. Like I still enjoyed the hell out of it,
I've been thinking about it basically nonstop.
and so I mean I don't think we're gonna do a non spoiler. Like it's a
No.
29-year-old movie that no one gives a shit
Look,
about.
if you've watched this review this long, there's spoilers. Don't be a baby about it later.
But so like yeah, like okay, it's a bad 90s miniseries with some of the worst CG graphics you'll ever see.
The
Like
CG graphics.
Ant-Man and
Oh my
Quantumania's got
god.
nothing on it, and I think what makes that worse is the fact that all of the buildup is in the head of that buildup is the bad CGI
Do you
graphics.
know what the CGI graphics legitimately remind me of?
Hmm.
When I was a kid and it was probably 95, 97, there was this program that had come out where you make your own movies and you have models and you have sets and you can select the model to walk or you can select the model person to fly. and everything is preset, and it's clunky.
So it was like 3D models, not 2D?
It was 3D models in the 90s to make your own movies, and everything was already preset. It was so bad. But that's what this CG reminded me of, is it was basically just the shell of the model with a little paint over it, and it was like, let's make it move.
So I didn't want to get too heavy into the CGI now. All of that to say, if you're into sort of bad 90s movies / maybe miniseries with really charming, clunky, bad CGI and dialogue, that's actually shockingly engaging.
You cannot say the dialogue in this was bad, though.
Yeah, I can.
No,
yeah,
not consistently.
well, that is the problem. You've got the really bad dialogue, like the horrible cereal sound, but then you've also got some pretty, and maybe it's delivery, but there's anyway.
When we get to it, I have a specific defense for the cereal sound.
If you have any sort of interest in those sort of bad, charming 90s sci-fi mystery horror type movies, definitely early days sci-fi vibes, sci-fi channel vibes, stop this review and go watch the movie.
SYFY.
Yeah,
channel.
well, it wasn't even SYFY back then. Like in the 2000s, it was spelled SI.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was the 2010s that brought in the SYFI. FY. Well, anyway, so all of that to say, if that's up your alley, please stop this review and go watch it. It's shockingly engaging.
I mean, you should watch it anyway.
I actually kind of regret watching the reviews I did, because the spoilers, like I would have, like some of the things I didn't know, from when I saw it back in 95. And I would have liked to have experienced that again. But I also don't think I would have watched it if I didn't have those. So, sort of a double-edged sword. But, I forgot my title card. I drew. Spoilers, there's the monster. Honestly, this probably looks better. I'm showing it to the camera for YouTube. I guess if this is a podcast, I don't know what I'm doing with this. We're just recording it for the hell of it. But, yeah. So, I guess we should probably do like a rundown of the plot maybe a little bit.
Okay, so beginning of the plot. Now, that's one thing that they did do in the beginning with all of the passengers at the airport. I'm going to Boston. I'm going to Boston. I'm going to Boston. There was a sense of destiny about the way they introduced, I guess, our Clue cast members.
You bring up destiny, and it reminded me of this vibe that sort of permeated a lot of mid and late 90s CGI, not CGI, sci-fi, that there was sort of this like angelic god element to a lot of them. And there's an element to this, of that to this later on. But you bring that up now and early on, and there sort of is that converging ley lines kind of thing.
When they were first introducing everybody, I thought it was gonna be a murder mystery type thing.
Ooh, you had no idea it was sci-fi.
I had no idea.
Ooh.
Because Stephen King has done just
The
Guy Went Crazy before. So I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, he's got his Shawshank Redemptions and whatnot, where there is no fantastical elements.
Exactly. I thought it was actually gonna be like The Green Mile, where there was one person who had some sort of supernatural ability, and they were evil.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
Wait, Green Mile doesn't have an evil person with supernatural powers?
No, I thought it was going to be one person had supernatural powers.
But they were evil.
In this situation, instead of being the sweet, lovable, poor dude, it was a bad guy. I actually really, really thought that it was going to be the business guy.
Balky's character. I can't even think of the actor's name. Bronson Pinchot or whatever.
Cokey McCokeface.
So he actually is most famous for a role on a little sitcom called Stranger Things. No, Perfect Strangers. Perfect Stranger Things. That is exactly what this is. This whole movie is just perfect. Anyway, Perfect Strangers is about a guy from a made up country, like backwoods country, that comes to not New York, Chicago to live with his cousin. And he just, I don't want to try and do the voice because I think it's going to segue into something that isn't the accent he does because I think it's made up, like he makes up the accent. And it's just going to end up sounding like something racist. So I'm not even going to attempt it. But he does the accent the entire show and he's super naive and whatnot. And he plays this really lovable, goofy, tall character. And then in this, he's this short guy wearing a baggy suit and he's just the most unlikable thing.
Yeah.
And it's such a juxtapose from.
Well, also, I don't think you can judge the baggy suit. That was the thing in the 90s.
Oh, okay.
Was that
So
particular type of suit.
no politics. Is that why Trump dresses like that? Why he wears ill-fitting suits?
Probably. It's
Okay.
probably a holdover from the 90s.
Because I mean, he's definitely the kind of guy who has not updated his style in a minute. So, those may actually all be the suits from the 90s. No, he's expanded a bit, so he would have had to have them
It could be that
largified.
that he just found in the 90s the tailoring was super comfortable and he keeps having his people tailor his suits that way.
You know, I really shouldn't be judging. I'm literally wearing like pajama shorts that I do go outside in. Like, not outside, like into the world. So I shouldn't judge. But anyway, so yeah, it's so weird. Like, because it couldn't be more polar opposite of the guy he played on Perfect Stranger Things.
It's like Brett Spiner playing Data and then also playing the hillbilly in Night Court.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like what a flip flop. Anyway, not to get too hung up on that, but like that's a real, and I think that's one of the reasons my mom didn't like or really had like a grudge against the Langoliers is because like Stranger Things was like a huge deal to her. So Balky, like, you know, he was Balky. Not Stranger. Perfect Strangers. Which the theme was playing all season 4 of Only Murders in the Building. Standing tall on the whatever. Anyway, that theme song is unreasonable. It's like the Power Rangers theme. It should not be that good. But yeah, so it does all the intros. You got the business guy and the little blind girl.
Yeah.
And the teacher who is easily the worst character in this whole thing. She's a big white noise.
I feel
Talk about Rice Krispie sounds.
I feel like there's something to her, and there probably is more in the novella, but I can't tell if that was a failure of direction, a failure of writing, a failure of acting, or a combination of all of them, or a miscommunication across all three.
I don't think there was a moment with her that I thought was well done. So I'd be willing to bet it was an acting issue.
I think the biggest issue with her that I had is there was never any why.
Why what?
So like she gets connected to the little blind girl. Why?
Because she's the teacher.
That's not a reason.
Kind of is. No, it taps into her natural. You know, you don't just become a teacher. Well, maybe you do. But, like, you think that somebody has, like, innate traits that draw them to that.
But it didn't.
Plus, she was the woman. Remember, 90s. Okay? We had 3 females in this story, and the most maternal one would have been her.
I never saw any reason why she had that specific connection with the kid, because you and I were elementary students in the 90s, and we both had teachers who hated our guts, and we both had teachers who adored us. Why did she adore that little girl? Because she was a teacher? No. Why was she the love interest? Because she was single?
Oh, yeah, it was definitely a forced love story, and I don't know if that's in the novella. I was thinking about it today on the way home. Like, that could have easily been cut. And I can think of the things you could have cut that would have gotten rid of that and would have made it fine. Like, it didn't need a love story. It's like 12 hours. The movie's like 12, like over the span of like 12 hours. Like in universe. Like, no way. Bull that they're all like, hey, you know what? We've really had a this is the first fucking time you've talked and you want to go on a date. The little girl just got stabbed and the next thing you were always like, hey, we should hook up back when we get to Boston.
We should have fun.
Or LA.
You and me should have swiping, what is it, right or left?
I think it's right. That is the
right.
Yeah. But so there's, I think, well, that would be check out. Right is right in society. Anyway, who else do we have? Oh, my favorite character, bar none, the pilot. His story, I love. He's probably the most well-rounded character.
I feel like his story had the best amount of setup. So in the film,
I'm sorry, Joey.
Rabbit Trail.
This is a
in the
mini
series.
Okay, high medium of art.
Okay. Uh, so everybody arrives at the airport in one way or the other. Most of them obviously coming to get onto a plane to go to Boston. However, our main lead hero, arguably the pilot.
Are we calling it? Because back when I was a kid, I thought it was the British guy. But like
No.
in hindsight, I'm like, no, our protagonist is
British dude is cool, but he doesn't go through the growth and change that Brian does. None of them quite go through the growth and change that Brian does. So if you're going strictly on the literary definition of hero, Brian is the hero.
I don't know if I 100% agree with that, but I definitely feel like he's a contender, one of the top 2 contenders for that spot. Easily. What was the British guy's name? I can't remember.
Sexy McSexy.
Knock off, not Brandon Pitchell, Pierce Brosnan.
Look, I just want to listen to his voice all day, every day.
That was so great. Like, that's just what you did in the 90s. You wanted to make a likable main guy protagonist British. Just cast a British guy with good teeth. Yeah. That's all you got to do. A British guy with good teeth, and you have got it.
With the appropriate Oxford accent rather than the street.
Well, yeah, you don't want to go Cockney with it, but although that would have been funny as fuck.
So
if he was like a super spy, spoilers, super spy. Assassin.
I actually learned this when I was studying an accent for an audition, but that traditional kind of stereotypical English accent that we hear.
Governor?
No, that we think of, like the
sexy one.
Like the super spy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 10% of English.
Oh yeah, they do that for us.
They don't.
That's for us.
No. It's they only the high aristocrats do it, and TV reporters.
Ooh.
Very specifically train in that accent. Everybody else just talk. So it kind of harkens back to America's like 30s and 40s when radio broadcasters were taught to speak with that kind of
the transatlantic accent.
Yes.
Oh god.
Yes.
There's okay. I don't want to get into this anyway. I don't want to get into this accent bit I saw. It's funny, but I don't want to get into it. Okay, real quick. There's a comedian. He's doing this bit, and he's like, I can tell you the exact moment. It's when the transatlantic accent died, and it's when the first black guy was allowed to play sports. And you hear the guy doing the transatlantic accent. Oh, he's up to the bat. Oh, he's a colored boy. Yeah. And then he hits a home run, and it's just like, oh, yep, he hit a home run, and then it killed the accent right then and there. The white people lost their confidence to do the transatlantic.
Oh my gosh.
He does it way funnier than me. I shouldn't have spoiled it for you, but anyway. Okay, so British assassin mechanic. I love his explanation of what he is. Do you remember what he said?
I'm the Queen's mechanic.
I fix things.
Yeah. Which is beautiful.
That's some of the really good writing. It's short. It's to the point. It's poignant. It paints an image.
I will say that Langoliers. I don't know about you.
Stupid name, but good movie.
I have become a little bit jaded to Stephen King in general.
I never was really behind his stuff. There's sort of a guilty pleasure in some of his stuff, like aside from Shawshank, because Shawshank is amazing as far as the movie goes. I don't fucking read. I'm American. I don't have to. But
Sienna hated Shawshank. It's a beautiful story, but it was so boring.
Well, but that's the thing, though. You get into the lives. It's like Tarantino's dialogue.
Yeah.
It gets you in there, but King, he puts the people there with you, and he puts you there with them, and
that's what I was about to say about this. Is I have gotten in recent years a little bit jaded against King because some of his stuff, I think it's because he churned it out so fast, but some of his stuff, it's like, this is like, like when we watched it was real riveting for a little bit, and then you were like,
Well, It Part 1
but
is objectively a better story, at least as far as the movies go. But it
this,
always fizzles out in that second half.
the Langoliers, though, like, even with the bad stuff in it, because honestly, the bad dialogue, the clunky bits, I felt like they were so charming instead of off-putting that it kind of made me go, okay, this is why Stephen King was Stephen King.
Do you think any of that has to do with the fact that it was a 90s movie? Like, it was a 90s movie.
I think a lot of that had to do with it being a 90s movie. A 90s TV miniseries. I think a lot.
You just say it.
That.
It just throws up so many wonderful red flags in my mind. But okay, so let's try and get past this intro. So we've got businessman McBalky. We've got Dinah the blind girl who has the thing, The Shining, or whatever.
She's got the.
Oh my God, she just has The Shining. That's what that is, right?
I've never seen The Shining, so I don't know.
I think she just has The Shining, but like a different like sphere of Shining. Anyway, in The Shining, the kid can. Do you want me to tell you?
I don't care. I'm probably never.
He can see
watch
dead
it.
people. It's freaking Haley Joel Osment. Anyway, we've got the British mechanic, the pilot, the boring lady, teacher lady.
Yep.
The teenage drug addict, the teenage nerd guy.
They don't introduce everybody, though.
No, they don't. They don't.
They introduce, like,
I guess that would be the core
big
cast.
3 or 4. Do they introduce the writer at that point, or do they introduce him
No,
on the
we
plane?
don't see him until on the plane.
So we've got our couple of people coming
Teacher, British, pilot,
I don't
girl.
think we see the British until on the plane.
He's the first scene.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. Again, I watched it today because I was dreaming about it.
You cheated.
I did cheat. Well, good news, good memory, and I watched it twice. Well, actually, I have a shit memory. I forgot. Anyway, no, it opens.
I forgot I have a shit memory.
It opens with the two guys in the car, where British guy is getting the assignment to kill the woman.
Oh, that's right.
That is the opening shot, and then I think we pretty quickly move on to the pilot after that.
And he complains she's just an innocent bystander.
Yeah. The pilot, he lands the plane, and he says there was a pressure issue. And his co-pilot's like, it's not a big deal. The mechanics will fix it. And he's like, it could have been a big deal. We were almost human pate, which is great setup for the resolution of this movie, for the final resolution of this movie. And that, I didn't notice it the first time, obviously.
I did, because as soon as they said, this is what we're going to do, I was like,
It's really good, though, because that's how he thinks of it in the final act of the film. Spoilers again. And I just thought that, like, that's, God, that's good. Nice full circle, you know?
It does feel a little bit like when he came to write this story, he actually took some flying classes or something. Or he went on a couple of planes, and every single time was like, knock, knock, I'm a writer. Can I shadow you guys up here in the cockpit?
It does have, we learned something when they land in the place, you know, mid-movie, an hour and a half in, there's a brake on the plane, and we both are like, they just have a brake pedal?
What?
Which, I mean, checks out. Like, it's got tires, it's got,
sense.
like, why wouldn't it? And you don't use it when you're flying, obviously.
Yeah.
It's only for the tires, but, like, just little things like that, like, are you shitting me?
We're like, wait, what? There's a pedal? What?
Which, I don't know if that's King or Tom Holland, not the Spider-Man, the director, who made this movie.
Right.
I don't know if that's King brought that or if Holland brought it, but either way, little moments like that where you're just like, we're learning.
There's a bunch of little moments in it that, like, when I write, I try to do research on, like, what was the weather on this day in this location? What did it feel like?
How grounded can you make it?
Yeah. Like, I'm trying to work on one right now about an archaeologist, and I'm finding, okay, well, now I have to go and study how archaeology is done. Not, oh, God, not enough to be an archaeologist. What's the Black Swan? Natalie Portman had to do a bunch of exercises specifically designed to make her look like a ballerina. Not to make her a ballerina, but to make her look like a ballerina.
To, like, get the muscles and whatnot?
Exactly. To give her something of the motion that would translate...
Keep talking. I'm going to get her medicine.
That would translate cinematographically. I can't word right now. But not literally. They didn't want to make her... Anyway. And I know that a lot of martial arts movies do that same thing. They don't want people to actually perform martial arts. They want them to be able to look like they're performing martial arts, and it's a completely different exercise. Anyway, it felt like King did that he did just enough research to make it seem...
Oh, pardon us. Baby woke up. I'm going to turn the camera just a bit in case you need to do the thing. But, oh yeah, put the focus on me. Ooh.
I was going to say, turn it back. The baby's cuter. Ouch.
All right. But yeah, no, just like, especially with Brian, just some great, and again, most of these characters are really one-dimensional, but with him...
Also, I like how they introduced an already complex motivation.
For who?
For Brian.
Oh, the dead ex-wife?
Your ex-wife was in an accident.
Which we don't get the full story of what that is until the end of... No, it's the end of the film. She okay?
She's fine.
If you want to milk her, you can. I've got you blocked on the screen.
Thank you. I've got you, baby.
Nobody will see anything.
Oh,
okay.
She just has to find her comfy spot, that's all.
Well, it doesn't help that I just put drops in her ear. Baby has been sick for a while.
Since, like, March, off and on.
Oh, God. I mean, I just meant this last week, but there's that, too. Go ahead.
What did you get all over your sleeve? Did you paint at daycare today? Oh, no.
Oh, did I ruin your life? I don't think I have a pause button on this.
It's all right.
Audience is just going to have to deal with it. Oh, cool. We got her. All right. I just got her to sleep. I'm mad she's already awake. You butthead. It's like 9 o'clock at night.
I'm not surprised. She had that little turnover, and we probably should have waited before we put drops in.
Yeah, that's on me. Anyway, so what? The 4 main characters get introduced,
and then they all get on the plane.
So yeah, he gets a red-eye spot on a full plane. I assume that his boss was like, "Bro, it's on the house. Go do the thing."
They said, "Come on, we can deadhead you back to Boston."
What is deadhead? I assume that was...
I've heard the turd.
Turd is the word.
I've heard the term before, and I know it's an industry term. I think it's basically just a red eye.
Okay. I assumed it was airport speak for on the house, but...
I think it's just I've gotten off of, driving a 6-hour flight, and now I'm going to get on a plane going back the other way and sleep on the plane instead of sleeping in a bed or a hotel. I think that bus and train drivers use a similar term. Instead of getting to stay in a hotel tonight to rest off my excursion, I'm going to sleep on another moving vehicle.
Oh, God, that sounds awful.
It really does.
Anyway, so we know his story. Ex-wife is dead. Obviously, that's not a one-way thing to feel. Is there anything else? Dinah mentions there's something weird in that man's head, which was just an awful line delivered poorly.
She said there's something bad in his head.
Something like that. Her performance gets progressively better as the film goes along. And I think she's bad at like social interactions as an actress, but she's really good at coming across as sort of otherworldly. And
I was going to say, I think part of it might be not necessarily that her performance is bad, but that the character itself is just a weird character. She's just a little bit of an oddball character, and the actress performed her very well, which is hard to read because a child 90s actress on a television miniseries.
I looked her up today. I think she's 42, so she would have been 12 or 13 when they filmed this. I think she looks younger than that. Like they definitely conveyed like a
Oh.
9 or 10-year-old, which is how old we were when this came out.
Well, she said at one point she was 9.
Okay, so they cast, older looking younger, which worked.
She looks like a 12-year-old, I think.
Oh, really? I thought she looked 9. But anyway.
She's got a density to her that 9-year-olds don't. She's just more there. I don't know how else to describe that.
Like, not as skinny? Not as lanky?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe that's what it is.
I don't know. We have a 5-year-old, so 9 is still sort of a fuzzy, distant future.
I was going to say, you might see in between now and then that, like, for a while, he's just sort of...
Although our boy's huge.
He really is.
He's probably going to look 13 when he's 9. Anyway, I do think her performance, she gives me real Kari from Digimon vibes, which is not going to be the last time I bring up Digimon in this review. Another one of those 90s vibe things that I want to get into. But yeah, she really comes off as like dirty, hairy Kari. Yes. I don't know what it is. Not early in the film, but in the last quarter of her role, I would say, in this. Really kind of blew me away, actually. We'll get there, but wow. Yeah, did not see it coming. Dark. Well, and I knew what was going to happen, but then I saw how it went down, and I went, oh, shit. But we'll get there. So everybody gets on the plane, and yada, yada, yada.
The plane takes off.
Little girl wakes up. And again, she's blind. She goes to reach in for Aunt. She's not there, yada, yada. She looks around. If anyone's there, please talk to me. And she finds a wig and screams. And that's what wakes up the rest of the cast.
And that's kind of what gets the story started.
Yeah,
so that's... For the first 20 minutes, it's all just fluff setup.
Which, like, I get why people had that... So, like, this was not well received in the 90s. And I get why that was a complaint in the 90s. But now... Well, with so many movies we have coming out now where it's just like, who is this, who is this character in this Marvel thing?
Yeah.
I really appreciated it.
It's very Agatha Christie. You don't...
I don't know her work.
Any murder, anything in the last century is Agatha Christie.
It's like a genre as opposed to an author?
She has created her own genre, basically.
Okay. Like Mary Shelley created horror.
Essentially, yeah. But anytime you're going into a murder mystery play, there's you spend the whole first act just introducing everybody. This is the doctor. This is the coquette. This is the mistress. This is the daughter. This is the son-in-law.
So that's why you thought murder mystery is because it had that.
Because the whole first act is just, this is who everybody is. And then the first act closes, and you kind of give everybody in the audience a minute to go, who do you think is going to die?
See, what I like about it, and it obviously didn't make me think of murder mystery because I've seen it before, but... One of the reasons I was really interested in watching this movie again is the liminal space horror element to it.
That was so good.
And that's a big thing for me. I was raised in the middle of nowhere, so like big open spaces really vibe with me where there aren't people around. One of the things I love about Beast Wars is that element where there's 10 characters on an empty planet. This is not the last time I'm going to bring up Beast Wars in relation to this review. Spoilers, CGI. So, like, for me, knowing that going into it, I really appreciated the slow pace and really just setting... Because the characters are, for lack of a better expression, the environment, really. Because they're the only ones who bring anything. Everything else is about being empty, and I love that. But I also get why in the 90s... not knowing you're going into a liminal space horror, not really having a category for that, and being told that this is a monster movie going into it, I kind of get why people were like,
where's the monster?
I do wonder if this is where a lot of my liminal space horror affinity comes from. Because I would have been 9 when I saw this, living in the middle of nowhere. Like, maybe that's one of the reasons I clicked with it so well. I don't know.
So... Where were we?
The girl wakes up,
Oh, yeah,
screams.
nobody is on the plane. The other few people wake up and they're like, what's going on? Everybody kind of freaks out.
And that's when we get our full cast. So we've got the teacher,
Mm-hmm.
British mechanic, pilot,
The
Balky
girl,
McBusinessman, Dinah the blind girl, and then we've got the teenage girl drug addict. We've got the teenage nerd guy. I should be at 7 at this point. The writer,
yep.
the token black guy, like that's who he be.
I loved his character
I
though.
I liked him, like he played it really likable, but
I
like
will
that was token black
I
guy
will say
syndrome.
that I felt like they set up something for him that never. He was the Chekhov's gun that never fired. Because when they introduced him, well, okay, so everybody freaks out a little bit. They all kind of have a little bit of a fight.
Or like what's going on, sort of,
Right.
yeah.
They break into the cockpit and let the pilot take over. And then there's this moment of, okay, well, let's actually introduce ourselves. And the black guy says he is a fabricator for airline parts.
Yeah.
Or he's a mechanic for airline parts. And I'm like, awesome. He's going to use his skill set at some point in this story very, very pointedly. And then he never did.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting and
Like
weird.
I was honestly a little bit excited to see him and the Brit work together to make like an in-flight sling for him to go down and fix a tire or something.
That was good. They also said that he was. It made me sad this time going to watching it because I was pretty sure he died the last time I watched it, but I wasn't sure.
Because he was going to visit
his first grandbaby, and that's one of those things where it kind of like in retrospect or on a second viewing, you're reminded that all of the people that were on this plane had their own story.
Yeah.
You know, you see the pacemakers and the watches, but you see the little girl's doll and you see the Walkman, and it's like
I really
they did a good
tried
job.
not to think about that doll.
You kind of have to, yeah.
Hard.
But it could still like give you that sense that like these were real people,
but
and that's.
I did love the bit that like medical devices were left behind.
The pacemakers and the pins and the
things that were inside of a person's body, the dental work, the bridge work,
yeah,
got left behind. It it gave me a Left Behind vibe.
The clothes disappear. Yeah, so the clothes disappear, which I think most Left Behind stories have the clothes drop, and I kind of get why they didn't do it here. But and then I also understand sort of a meta reason why they didn't. A meta reason. Well, on one hand, without there being clothes, it's when they get to the place they're going, it's less obvious that there aren't clothes at the airport from people. When it's just coins and watches and whatnot, it's not as overt that stuff is missing when they get to where they're going. But more than that, and maybe it's because I was a kid in the 90s, but it sort of felt like there was this general vibe of a human has more value to it metaphysically. And the only way I can describe that is sort of anime logic. And the best version of that I can, like, example I can use is The Matrix. And the friggin' Wachowskis do this in everything they write. They did it in Jupiter Ascending, but they say the human is a battery, right?
Yeah.
Which we all know that the human body wastes more resources than it would generate for a machine to get electricity from. But it was that mentality of like there's that spiritual thing inside of every person that just is more, you know? Like in Jupiter Ascending, you could take a whole planet's worth of people and condense them into a Regenex, which allows someone who takes it to regenerate their youth. And so the people that take it, that harvest these worlds for this Regenex, use it to like, and it's like that doesn't fucking make any sense. But it's more of like spiritual sci-fi.
Oh.
And this movie, I think, has that in it, and like so that kind of ties into like the clothes went with them because it's like a part of them, like their identity. Am I just totally not making sense right now?
No, you're making sense. I looked at it a little differently.
Okay.
So like specifically with the Wachowski brothers, I didn't know about. I've never seen.
Sisters now, but at the
Oh,
time,
brother.
brothers.
I've never seen Jupiter Ascending.
Don't or do.
So,
That should be our next
oh
one. Saturday, here we come.
Jesus. But I know with the Matrix, the idea of them being batteries has some scientific basis in it. Like the human body creates and needs more electricity in it than something like 40 megacities every second. Like there's a lot of electricity in a human body, and I can't remember all of the numbers behind it.
All I know is that I've heard
But
scientists who are much smarter than me say that it doesn't make sense. You would waste more resources keeping the human alive than you would get out of them to power a machine.
that does make sense. Actually, it really does.
But again, even though they're trying to put a scientific spin on it, it's that idea of there's more inside the person than we can imagine.
Right.
It's using science with that vibe. And I mean, The Matrix came out in '99, so I think.
As far as the disappearing clothes go, going a little bit more scientific with it, most clothes are a more organic base than not. And if you look at everything that got left behind, it's mostly metal. So if somebody's wearing cotton or wool, like a wig got left behind, that's probably synthetic, like plastic, polyester. So it's likely that the stuff that was disappearing was all organic. Now, if that were the case, then somebody should have left behind like a thong or something, some flip-flops. You know what I mean?
I think it's just a kitschy error / we don't give a shit in the filmmaking process. But because I think cotton would be more asleep than awake as an organic material, so it would have gotten left behind.
That's possible. And
so,
then also, I just thought of a counter argument too. If it were clothing, or if clothing got left behind or got taken because it was organic, then our main cast should have all woken up naked.
Wait, no. I don't need to see Balky naked. Anyway, so Balky makes an ass of himself. What is his name? Craig.
Craig Toomey.
I think that may be the first time I came across the name Craig. Because when they said it, I went, it's not Greg. Is this the thought process I had in 95 when I heard that? What's Craig?
I will say...
Because they say his name a lot.
This movie in particular, one of the things I did not like about it was his name. Because
Toomey sucks.
Everybody says it different. So it's like, are they which character are they talking about? So you have one character says it, and the way they pronounce it, it sounds like Tommy instead of Toomey. Another one says it, and it sounds like he's saying Tooney or Toon. They say Craig, Greg, Craigie Weggy.
I think the Brit called him Donner at one point, or Dahmer or something.
Right.
But and then the little
it's very confusing.
It's funny you mentioned the pronunciation because on this viewing today, I noticed the little girl when she's saying his name at the end, near the end of the movie, she keeps calling him Craig.
Yeah,
Craig. I didn't notice it last time. I was blazed last time, but yeah. But I think that's the first time I heard the name Craig. Like, it stood out to me on Saturday when we watched it.
And your best friend is now Craig.
Yeah. So.
Oh, I wonder if this had any influence on y'all's relationship.
I don't think there's any crossover between Evil Balky and my best friend. I really don't. But, oh my God. So, God, we're barely past. It's funny. We're 43 minutes in, and I think the movie was at an hour when they
finally woke up.
Again, I love the pacing, but I like it a little bit slower.
Anyway, so they spend a lot of time on the airplane kind of arguing and hypothesizing what happened, blah, blah, blah. The mystery writer, who is he's the Stephen King insert in this, right?
He is, and he's definitely clearly written as the guy that knows the most about the situation. And we've got our pilot, who's definitely the guy who deals with the plane the most.
I feel like he was trying to fill a trope with that, though.
With the writer?
Either I couldn't quite tell if he was a Stephen King insert.
Oh, yeah.
Or if he was trying to poke fun at writers, because it felt like the guy was trying to be Sherlock Holmes all the time.
He did say, I'm a mystery writer, deduction is my bread and butter. And I remember just being like, oh, King, You just don't ever
What?
change.
What?
Don't ever change, bro. You got this.
Like, are you making fun of writers, or are you saying you're a writer so you're that smart? What is happening here? It was very confusing. Do you know what it did remind me of just a little bit?
What?
So you know I love my true crime podcasts.
Well, you're a white woman in America. It's what y'all do.
We drink coffee and listen to murder and wonder why we have anxiety.
Yeah.
Don't you move that coffee away. You bring that back.
Talking about our not murder mystery, liminal space horror.
There is one story of a woman who was working on a murder mystery, who took her husband on a murder mystery weekend getaway and murdered him.
Good cover.
And, right?
If they find a dead body during the thing and they're just like, well, how do we solve who did this? And they don't even know until the end of the weekend. He's dead. What is that smell?
Oh! But she was fairly famous. What made her famous was the murder mystery weekend. She was trying to write a murder mystery. But what really, really made her famous is that she was quoted by, I believe, a witness as saying, "I'm smarter than the police." And I know I am because I've researched all of these other murders where they messed up and they shouldn't have. And it was obvious. Because she was researching her murder story. And, you know, when you've Monday morning quarterback a thing?
Well, here's the $64,000 question. Did they catch her?
Yeah.
Okay.
64. Are you really?
Because they said it in the movie.
I know.
They said it in the movie.
That's why I'm really.
We're actually at that
like,
scene. So he's like, what's the six? So all the people are missing, and they've got all these, like, what the hell's going on? The pilots are missing.
Yeah, but all that to say, he reminds me of her, but not evil. Also not for real.
Dean Stockwell from Quantum Leap. Good actor. Played Al. He's a good guy. Died, 3 years ago? I don't know. Love the guy, though. The actor who played the writer.
Oh, okay.
Dean Stockwell played.
No, he's adorable. I actually just want to sit and have a coffee with that dude.
I'm actually surprised by how poorly he did in this role. Like, the whole time, it's very clearly written with that Sherlock vibe, and he was not the guy?
I wonder if there wasn't a rushed aspect to the production, because I kind of feel like everybody, all of the actors, felt like they could do more or do better, and...
Well, so many of them are that guy actors. I don't know them by name, but like, oh, it's Balky. It's Al from Quantum League, yada, yada, yada. Even the guy who played the pilot, David Morse, like, you see him and you're like, I know you. You were in something. Easily the best actor in this movie, I would say. I think the only time I was, like, cringing at his performance was when he was reacting to the actual Langoliers showing up. And he very clearly just didn't know what to do.
He didn't.
Which, when you consider this is one of the first instances of the Marvel movie monster, where the actors are just looking at a nothing and being told, like, this is the thing you're looking at. React. Figure it out, bitch. Like...
Well, also, I think that, especially in the last few years, we've been trained to want... and I guess especially in fantasy, for all of our heroes to immediately be like, I see a thing and I know what to do about it. But the truth is, like, how long do you have to stare at a car accident before you go, oh, shit, and then respond? Like, me, I know I need a solid 3 to 5 seconds to figure out what I'm looking at.
I didn't think what he was going for he sold. But that's the only point in the movie where I was like, eh. But he's clearly wasn't built for that. Like, he is a down-to-earth, like, just, like, chill dude, like, for the roles he plays. Like, and he did a really good job.
So, anyway, moving on. They find an empty world, like, completely empty.
When they finally land, and they're afraid to land at first because they don't know.
Before they land, the world is empty. They're reaching out on the radio.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody's
no
responding.
Static, nothing. No
They're
lights on the ground. It's early morning, like, it's still dark out.
There's this actually kind of beautiful debate where they say, should we go back to Denver? Should we go to Boston? And the pilot says, we're not going to either of those two airports because...
We're going to Stephen King's hometown.
It is... Well, he's got a really good reason. It is busy. It is Monday. Those are the two two of the biggest airports in America. Boston in particular is huge. If we're going in blind where we can't even talk to air traffic, we're going to have a mid-air
We need to
collision.
go somewhere
It is not
sparse.
happening. We're going to the smallest airport I can think of, and that is Maine.
Smallest that can handle this plane, which they don't cover at this point in the movie. But at the end of the movie, he's like, no, there's no other airstrips that'll handle a plane this big. So that was
Yeah.
also a factor that I thought like should have been introduced earlier, because it's like between Boston and Denver, you want to go to Maine?
Honestly, he may have said it in his first description. Well, you've watched it.
I watched it today, and they didn't have anything to indicate that. But like again, I can deal with the clothes being gone. I can deal with going to Stephen King's hometown, because when I write, I definitely have my hometown in mind. So liminal spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it made sense.
But yeah, there's that debate
But
of like, should we even land?
Yeah, and I really liked that conversation. I really did. I will say I was surprised he didn't just say like, well, I'll land on an empty freeway, or I know of an empty field over here. It'll be fine. I can make it work. Or heck, there's the Hudson River. We'll just go and do that.
That is one of the things I really appreciated about this, about his character and or performance in the movie, is that he's very by the book.
Yes.
Like he does not cut corners with the practices he takes as a pilot.
Which I just
he covers
realized.
the like safety, like to get going, like, and it's not in the movie, but he says he's about to tell them the protocol for going down the safety slide and things like that. And it's just like he's just very, there's almost a procedural element to it.
I just
which
realized
I appreciate.
that adds to his character. Because then later when you find out why his marriage fell apart, it's an even bigger deal because that's not in his character.
Yeah, it really tells you that he was at a low point when he made that decision.
Yeah.
That he had to be hitting a wall, considering that at this point, his ex-wife is dead. He's got really complicated feelings with that, and he's genuinely torn up that she's dead. And he is now in another dimension, and or what the fuck is going on. And he still
but
is
the
like...
book is still existent, people.
And he still turns on, like, the seatbelt light.
Yeah.
Like, when there's only 9 people that he's shuttling. So, like, it's just really... Just really appreciate that almost, like, next-gen Star Trek element.
Yeah.
Simple thing adds a lot of weight, adds a lot of gravitas.
The Federation may not be here, but we are Federation, therefore.
And the Federation is here, goddammit!
We are American Pride. Oh, I'm never saying that again.
It doesn't read like that, but okay.
It doesn't. American Pride is the name of the airline.
It is, yeah.
So that was supposed to be...
Which I assume that's from the book, because I don't think that's an actual airline.
It's not.
But
absolutely not. But it's a good name for an airline.
So, big moment before we land the plane, actually before we even get in the cockpit, Toomey will not shut up, and it finally comes to the point where the British guy does the Vulcan pinch on his nose.
On his nose.
And that's like the first moment where this movie, the relationships between the characters from one character to another do change, and he is the bulldog. Like,
yeah.
If I was thinking about it today, if Angle, the pilot, is Rick Grimes from Walking Dead, the British guy is his motorcycle hillbilly sexy guy that everybody liked.
Daryl.
He's the Daryl.
Oh, I like the Brit even more now.
Because there's like a later moment where Toomey's going off again, and the Brit just goes at his face, and he just shuts up.
He just kind of shrinks. Oh, I was going to say, this is kind of an interesting time capsule, too, specifically because of Toomey.
Oh, the blue shirt with the white collar?
No, he has...
Because that reeked of 80s.
More societally, he has that moment where he freaks out at the captain and he's like, I bought a ticket for Boston. You're going to turn this plane around and you're going to take me to Boston. I'm not going to Maine. You're going to land this plane in Boston. Do you not understand? I have a meeting this morning at 9:00. You are going to... And he's a little barking chihuahua at him so bad. And he's being just the most entitled, monstrous in existence. And it's kind of interesting that in the 90s, that's who that was. if somebody was going to do that, there was even a moment.
That was the 90s Karen?
Exactly. There was even a moment where when the pilot was getting on the plane, he and his
Oh my
boss
God.
saw Toomey chewing someone out.
Please tell me that in the 90s, if we'd had memes, that would have been called a Craig. Craig and Karen. So my best friend Craig, his significant other is Karen. And I've pointedly never made that joke to her. Because I know she's cool with it now, but like when I met her, I was like, I'm not making this joke. I'm not doing it because I don't know this person yet.
She's so cool. I've asked her before.
Oh no, she's like, kick-ass. Yeah,
no, it's
I
okay.
love her. I love her. But anyway, sorry.
But no, I like that the idea of the entitled jerk in society has sort of kind of moved from being like it's moved from an acceptability, I guess, of a business person. Now they have to perform with grace. However, the I guess overpriced stay-at-home mom is now the entitled person in society that is tropey.
I feel like there's something there.
I feel like it's empowering. It's falling down the ladder a little bit because in the 90s there was still, a housewife has very little power.
Look at the female roles in this movie, yeah.
And now women have, a housewife has power equal to that of a major businessman in the 90s. They have a say and respect societally enough to behave that way. So how is that particular personality, character, trait, flaw, trope, whatever, gonna trickle down the ladder even further? Like, who gets it next?
I don't know if I 100% agree, but I do think there's an element to that. I don't know if that's like the exact way I would put it, but there's definitely something there.
I'm not entirely sure what I'm trying to get at.
Either
but there
way,
is something there with it. Like it was okay for a businessman in the 90s. Now it's a housewife. I kind of like that progression.
I will say the psychology of Craig in this is a lot more compelling than it was when I was 9. I don't want to say the performance is great. He has his moments. He has a couple moments in this where I was like, that shit was good. But
psychological breakdowns aren't exactly compelling to the average 9-year-old anyway.
Well, yeah, and like I think anyway, definitely one of the carrier elements of this story. Like it very much has wings.
Oh, yeah.
For the through line of this story, and the way it unfolds, and I think that's really interesting, the way they did it. But to kind of go off that, Dinah has this like connection moment with him, where after his psychological break
so well done.
is happening before they've even decided to land. He starts looking around and he sees everybody's face and they're all just, it looks like it's like plastic and then gore under it.
Yeah.
Or something of that ilk. And the way it's shot, the camera's in front of Dinah's face and she's in the front row of seats and he's standing in the back row of seats. And every time he looks at a different face, her head in front of him, closest to the camera to us, is their heads are snapping in unison. And it was a really interesting shot. It was for a 90s made for television movie. I was just like, oh shit, that was like avant fucking garde. What the hell?
Choreography on it was spot on.
And I mean, very clearly they just had someone doing the here's the treat dog thing behind the camera, but like, it was so well done. Their head snaps were perfect, and Dinah was seeing through his eyes, and kind of setting up things to come. But
yeah. It was very good. And
there are a couple of moments in this where the filmography, normally just kind of meh, snaps into awesome.
I will say I don't know necessarily that it was just the treat thing, because with the way the camera was set, if they were looking at the same thing, it would have been looking like they're looking at something different.
Maybe. I mean, maybe they actually had the people standing and the director was saying, look at this guy, look at her, look at him.
Again, it would look like they were looking at two different spaces.
Oh, because of the okay.
Because of the Lord of the Rings.
So you're saying they had to have two simultaneous moving.
Exactly.
Whatever it is, it was
It was gorgeous.
I loved it. Like, not super into like knowing filmography, but when I see some shit like that, I'm like, okay,
I mean, that's
someone's ass went into that.
That's my degree. It's hard for me to not.
But I'm just saying, like, I don't have any education in that, and I'm like, oh damn, that was good. That made me feel something.
I kind of regret my education in it sometimes.
Does it ruin movies for you?
For the most part, I'm able to suspend it anymore. But initially, I was like, wow, I know exactly how you did it, and you're a lazy piece of shit. I could have done that so much better. And honestly, I'm probably half the budget. Moron.
All right, I don't think there's anything much more to cover. They decide to land.
Yes.
Nothing's outside, and the cloud cover goes real low. And it isn't until they break through, I think, about 500 feet where they get out of the clouds.
That was a freaking butt clinch scene, by the way.
I think
they put that Dutch tilt on the camera to make it look like they were actually nose diving, and they were like, "We're 500 feet from sea level." We're
Dutch tilt.
And you're like, "Are you going to drive this plane right into the ground? Is this how this movie ends?"
But I think that's another one of those next gen elements that I came to love. Is there's a very procedural element to it. This is what we're doing. We're at 3,000 feet. We're at 2,000. You're watching them go through the process.
And they start panicking.
And then and this movie does the panic moments like that so well. It's gotta be
and
best thing the film does, like, broadly speaking.
I think, too, going back to the by the book thing with Brian, I think part of why it's good is because Brian is like, this is what the book says, and I am pushing the boundaries of it, so you can feel him pushing out of necessity what needs to be pushed, and it's making him uncomfortable. Oh.
Did you drop the baby?
No, she just rolled onto the computer.
I'm going to plug this in. Computer's dying, so.
I see that.
Give us a moment to charge it. You take the cord.
I got it. But I wonder, I'm hypothesizing that part of why that scene is so tense
is the way it's written in the book.
Because we can feel Brian's discomfort with, I'm breaking procedure. I'm pushing the book.
Oh, okay. Because he is such a by the book guy. He's so straight up.
And, you know, when the pilot starts breaking procedure, everybody feels it. And you know everybody was feeling it. They were back there in the cabin going, oh!
Well, I think most of them had probably written on planes before, so...
Yeah. Except for Craig, who was just tearing up his magazine.
Craig... yeah. Okay. Oh, God, I feel like I had a piece of trivia for that. But anyway.
I want to understand that. I actually really want to look up, like, is tearing paper like that... Because he does it again and again and again.
It's his thing. It's like, it's his fidget spinner in this movie.
I would love to look up and see, is that like an actual thing that comforts people, and why?
Well, I think my hypothesis with this is that it either drowns out what he hears of the Langoliers coming, like long before we actually land and we can actually start to hear them. Or it drowns out his father. Because his father is a character in his head. He's the guy that's screaming in his ear, always. And I think that's one of the reasons Craig is always yelling, is he's yelling over his dad, or he's mimicking.
Screaming over that noise. So...
either literally or metaphysically, whatever.
The going theory I have with it, because you brought it up, is in neuroplasticity practice... One of the things you do is you find a spot and you tap rhythmically, and it grounds you. It brings you back. So, like, you can tap on your chest and say, I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm okay. And there's this rhythm.
It's sort of a Pavlovian thing.
And this, it might be Pavlovian. It gets you out of your own head, out of your own daydreams, out of your own spiral. It gets you focused on the here, the now, what's going on.
They're going to be wondering why I'm tearing paper at work tomorrow.
But some of the exercises that I've heard that plasticity practitioners do in the beginning with new patients is you just spend 30 minutes to an hour going, this is my forehead. This is my
Just
cheek.
to create that foundation.
Right. And then as you go on, there are people, you're going to start seeing this in grocery stores every now and then. If somebody has anxiety, they know to tap their knee or their hand or their shoulder, because that's where they hold tension. That's where they start to tense. So they start tapping that to say, no, body, we're okay.
Why is my therapist not giving me this? Why am I learning this from the Langoliers?
But I wonder if that tearing isn't him giving himself that sensory input on his
Pulling
own,
him out of his
like
head.
he needs, kind of like an autistic kid who bites their own arm. They need a certain amount of sensory input, and then the tearing has a sound. But also, I don't know if you've noticed, every time he tears, it has a very specific speed and rhythm and sound, regardless of what he's tearing. If it's a napkin, a newspaper, a magazine, printouts.
Well, I noticed
the
way he does it. It creates a constant.
Yes.
And the
And
Langoliers
it's
coming.
perfectly straight.
I don't know if this is a parallel thing or if the sound of the Langoliers is something he hears. And I think I might be jumping with that. So it's probably more of like a parallel for the story. Because their sound is constant, and it's that continual.
The sound
And
of
he
the
does the
Rice
same
Krispies
thing.
when you first pour in the milk.
Maybe, like, thematically, he's the harbinger of the Langoliers. Not literally,
Oh.
because they're not even Langoliers, really. And that's one of the really interesting elements in
unnamed
the story
thing.
I want to get into later. But, like, you know, that idea. He's not literally, but, you know, thematically, he's the harbinger. They're not literally Langoliers, but thematically they are.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. There's definitely something there, whether
That's-
it was fully thought out or I'm reading into it too much or whatever.
No, that's interesting because I've been thinking since we watched this, like, how many other ways can you describe that sound? I hadn't considered tearing paper, but I've been considering wrinkling paper. Like when you wad it up, that yeah, that makes sense.
Because his dad even made that sound, which was close to what sound they actually made. So in the movie, so I don't know. Anyway, I think that's all I wanted to cover with him for now. So they land, and there is just there's a building, and there's ground, and there's sky, and there's wind, and light, but everything else is missing. Mm-hmm. The smells, the sounds, echoes, people specifically.
Your shoes, the heels of your shoes on the concrete have no weight.
They make sound, but it's very muted. Yeah. And that's one of the things I love about this. It's not that there's nothing, it's that there's almost nothing. And that's,
it's like
it adds a layer of depth where you could just do nothing, and that's liminal technically. But they gave it something.
It's like the opposite of an empty room when you go in and your sound bounces and you can see everything and all of the smells are like almost new car fresh. It's almost the complete opposite where it's all void.
Yeah, and they've got a couple of really good moments there where they're yelling through the air. So they go into the airport, obviously.
Which I just realized being able to describe it so clearly, like I was there and could feel it. That's really impressive that the movie, a 90s television miniseries that had a whole 2
that starred David Morse
to describe this new world made you feel it so viscerally that you could explain it to somebody else.
They do a good job before they land being like establishing for the audience like absolutely no context. Because they're like, in this earth that we're on, where whatever the hell's happened, the Rockies could be in upstate New York, yada yada yada. So when you get there, you're absorbing every element as the as the characters are, which is again one of those like
So I guess we skipped that one of the hypotheses that they figured out on the plane was that they might be in an alternate dimension where it is Earth but just different.
Which is probably one of the only moments in this movie where I felt like they kind of jumped ahead a little bit. Baby's passed out. Like, out.
Yeah, that's adorable.
One of the only moments where I felt like they skipped over, like sped through something is them all being like, I bet this is an alternate dimension, yada yada.
I like
But,
that it was
like, whatever.
I like that it was the two brainiacs that came up with that.
It was the writer and who else?
The kid who was
The
on
nerdy
his
kid?
way to college to play the violin.
Yeah.
The one whose t-shirt said Beethoven.
So I saw that you kept mentioning the first time we watched it that Beethoven capitalizes his H.
It's not capitalized.
It wasn't capitalized.
I think it was curled every time I saw it, so it looked like the T and the H were mushed together.
I was
to
thinking
look like
that was
capital.
it. But you kept saying, you said it like 5 times when we watched it, and I was too blazed to care and or see. I don't know.
I don't know why.
This time around,
It was driving me insane, and I think near the end of the show, I think it was literally the last scene, his shirt was finally flat enough that I could see all of it, and I was like, oh, that's not as much fun.
I noticed that, I think, when they were in the basement of the airport after the kid brained, what's his name? With the thing. But anyway, so they land, they go in, there's nothing. Food has no taste. There's no fizz in soda or beer, and they don't have taste. Matches won't light, or they'll flash, but then they immediately go out.
I love
the air doesn't have a smell.
I love how when the food has no taste, they spit it out and they're like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. Dude, just wait. Just wait 30 years because COVID's going to make the whole world that.
Well, that's actually a really good point. If you want to make one of your friends gag and or throw up, do a blind taste test with milk.
Dude,
but give them orange juice. And because they're expecting milk, the orange juice is so far off of what they think milk tastes like, and the brain is expecting milk, that they gag and or throw up.
That happened to me literally a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I can't remember if it was you or somebody at work.
I think it was me. This sounds familiar.
Handed me a drink, and I think I was expecting juice, and it was soda or something. And I went, oh, okay. I just had a moment where my whole body was like, no, reject.
So if you took a bite, you're expecting a ham sandwich, you take a bite and there's no flavor, you might think spoiled, which is what happens. The guy thinks it's spoiled initially.
The not Lewis Black, the happy, no, hungry Lewis Black.
Yeah. So he's the 10th character that I didn't get to when I was counting.
I don't know his name.
Mr. Warwick, and he's just eating the whole time, and I love him.
I love him.
He wakes up. He's the last one to wake up. He learns what's going on, and then he's like, "Anyone know how to use the kitchen on this planet?"
Yeah, that's his immediate response. He's like, "Oh, okay."
The pragmatism / hunger overall. Doesn't matter that he's in a supernatural experience. He getting a sandwich.
It's almost. You almost want to be like, what other shit has this man been through that he took this?
This is not his first Langoliers. Oh. No, he was great. He wasn't my favorite character. He was definitely up there when I watched it, though, this on Saturday. Oh, my gosh. And he does nothing else. He has no other role in the movie. I was actually worried he was going to die. I was like, no, don't take my Mr. Warwick.
Oh, yeah, no, when he woke up and his very first thing was an, okay, punchline, I was like, he did.
But, spoilers, he made it.
He did.
So, and I didn't see him in any of the reviews I saw, like, in the final scene. So I was really worried about Mr. Hungry.
Mr. Hungry.
I'll just call him Hungry from now on. He's just... Inside Out has angry, and he's hungry.
And that's exactly who it is. He is Lewis Black if his defining characteristic was hunger instead of anger.
Trying to think what else next to cover.
Okay, so they go inside.
Right, there are no clothes. There's no
they figure out,
watches.
And What's-Her-Face starts hearing the sound.
Oh, I had a theory. So they don't ever explain in the movie that why the sleeping people go through the portal. That it's a time rip. And so the people that were asleep on the plane are the ones that wake up, and everybody else is gone. Everybody who was awake vanished. They don't explain why. I had a theory that things that weren't moving are in this slice
Stasis.
of time. And because they were asleep and thus not moving, that's why they stayed behind. So, like,
Mm.
there are no planes in the air frozen, as you would assume there might be. Like, they go all the way there and they don't see anything in the sky. There's no cars on the road.
Yeah.
None of the planes on the tarmac are there because maybe they were moving to take off, to land, to pull up to the loader unloader thing for the people. You know, the only trucks that are there have a door open as though the driver were out of it doing something. So maybe movement is the key, or for what shows up in this past.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Um, or at least as far as what makes it in. But anyway.
I don't know. So in the airport, Toomey has one breakdown after another that.
Or he just is a man shaped breakdown.
Well, no, I will say I kind of appreciated, now that I'm thinking about it, Toomey's breakdowns are our exposition. The more he breaks down and has a crazy rave about, well, the Langoliers do this and Daddy was evil and blah 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 blah, the more we get told about what's actually happening.
Can you explain what you mean?
So instead of saying, well, we're in the past or we're in a frozen time thing, the Brainiacs kind of play it out in a beautifully lecturally way that's actually very fascinating if you're into Dead Poet Society type stuff. Which I am, so I really appreciated that. But once you figure out the time thing, the impending, they've got that impending heaviness, that what is that sound? I don't know, but we've got to leave. We've got to leave before it gets here.
This movie does this wonderful job of straddling nothing's going on and we're in, like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah. It's,
I don't know how they did it, but
do
man.
you know what? It feels like a wartime movie in that way. Where
Hurry up and wait.
You are sitting in the trenches with your boys and they're tense and they're waiting for that whistle that's going to go off at any moment.
I will admit I envy this movie's ability to take nowhere with nothing happening and just make it dramatic AF.
Yes.
Like, that's amazing.
And
because
as
somebody
man.
who when I write, I enjoy writing in empty spaces. Seeing that done so well, I'm just like, oh shit, that.
Do you know what it feels like? It does it in a way that makes it feel like you're holding your breath. The whole time you are holding your breath, waiting for the thing to happen. You're at the top of the roller coaster, looking down, and you don't know what's in that roller coaster. It's
like pitch black.
Have you ever ridden a dark roller coaster?
I have never ridden a roller coaster. So.
Ever? Not a one? I thought you rode and you didn't like them.
Raised in the middle of nowhere, remember?
Oh, we're fixing this.
No, we're not.
We're fixing this.
No, we're not. Motion sickness is my bedfellow.
They have these wonderful roller coasters that are like Lost Mine roller coasters. And you get on and you can see the tracks going in. And it's the whole roller coaster is in a building that has no lights. So you get on and you can see the tracks going into the dark. And you, as the roller coaster goes, like you can feel the darkness descend upon you as you lose the vision of the roller coaster. And then the whole roller coaster, every twist, every turn, every up, every down. And then, oh my God, that was a loop-de-loop. I didn't know that was coming. There is no bracing yourself.
You are not selling me on this.
I'm saying that's what this, I wouldn't do a dark roller coaster for you. I'm not, especially not for the first one. Honestly, we might do like the Mr. Freeze or the Superman, the 3-second roller coaster that's just there and back, and you're like, oh, thank goodness it's over. Just a nice little quickie.
No, I'm good.
But that's what this movie feels like, is it's that that moment of that roller coaster when you cross into the dark and you're like, what is in store right now?
Yes. But also, where were
What
you
is
going with the exposition
happening?
thing?
So with a lot of the breath holding, you don't get any, you don't see the dinosaur footprint and go, oh, there are raptors here. We better be careful. Don't go into the tall grass. You don't get any of that. So instead, what you get is Toomey freaking out, telling Dinah about Langoliers. Langoliers are going to come and get you. They eat little boys and girls who scamper around and don't do anything.
That is one thing I do like. The first time anybody name drops Langoliers outside of Toomey's brain is him, and he mentions casually that all the lazy people got eaten up by the Langoliers, and the pilot's like,
Yeah.
"What?" And then he's just like, he keeps going on his rant, but the next part of his rant is more grounded. It's back about
Yeah.
getting back to Boston, yada yada yada. And I love that there's that like sliver, and we just watched like the sequence before that was that thing in his head of his dad freaking out at him and talking about the Langoliers. And so we get all of that condensed down to that sliver immediately after, and then he's back to being his normal self, like the real world to me. And that's like, it's just like, as he starts unraveling more, that's like the first part where the supernatural element of his unraveling starts peeking out.
Also, side note, can you imagine as an adult human being with a full on career having that one horror story that terrorized you as a kid that you finally outgrew, suddenly getting some kind of teeth as an adult?
I don't like where this is going.
Because that's what this poor guy just went through.
I remember my mom mentioning that in the movie. Like when we watched it, it's like, man, that really sucks. Like, what she say was like, it sucks that his childhood fear got him or whatever. But it was so like she hated this fucking movie. I don't know why I don't know why she watched the whole thing, but I just her negativity toward the movie permeated it. But yeah, like, and I didn't really get that as a kid, but now like that hits a lot harder, and I don't think it was necessarily done great. Specifically, the sequence where he gets got, but
Yeah.
just that psychological element of the thing you have feared most that is not real
Is
when
suddenly
a
completely
supernatural element
real.
shows up and you project that fear onto it. Like that's great. That's one of the things that's great
It's
about this.
beautiful.
I will say, to kind of go back to the suspense thing, is
Not
thought I had
not that it's beautiful that it happened, but it's beautiful writing.
beautifully unfolded. I guess I'll
It's
say.
like if you played Bloody Mary at a sleepover when you were 12 and then as an adult you saw a psycho crazy woman hunting you down. You're like, "Oh my god, it's Bloody Mary. She finally caught up to me."
That's a great parallel. But to kind of backtrack real quick, that is really good. The third time I've seen the movie was today, and I'm 30 years deep in this movie. Like I know what happens, and even then, as they're doing some of their suspenseful stuff,
Yeah.
I feel myself. I can't unclench. I know how this ends. I've known how this ends for 30 freaking years, and yet it still has me. And I know some of it's the music, which isn't great, but it's still just like it does
They've
that
got
thing.
this weird way of doing the atmosphere, and do you know what it is? It is that moment in Jurassic Park in the rain when the T-Rex first shows up and breaks the wires and you go, "Oh my god." I still can't watch that without holding my breath. And granted, in Jurassic Park, that's a whole what, 3 minute sequence?
Before it like breaks out of the cage, you mean from when it starts to actually being out?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not long. Now this movie stretches that out to like an
An
hour and a
hour.
half, maybe an hour. Yeah, I think you're probably right. It's more like an hour.
Yeah.
Oh
Like, wear your oxygen masks because you're going to need it. Do you get it? Because it's an airplane.
yeah. I wasn't listening to you guys. I wasn't listening.
Rude.
No, I was actually trying to think about the next thing that happens. So you can talk about it so I can go to the bathroom. So I, I think the next big event is Dinah speaking up about what she hears. Do you want to
Oh,
get into that while you run to the bathroom, or is there something else you want to cover?
with the Rice Krispie sound.
The horrible cereal noise.
I think we should actually pause it because what I have to say about it is going to require back and forth.
I don't think I can pause it. If you want to pause
Okay.
that one, this one we can't.
I'll just talk about something else.
We'll just talk about something else. We'll be right back on this episode of
Oh,
90s movies that could not be let. No, fuck it. Less relevant.
You need the Monty Python intermission music.
Yeah. I don't have it.
I wonder if I can find it. Please hold while I find goofy intermission music. See if I can find goofy intermission music. Let's see. We're going to go to the Google Webs and put in royalty free. Oh, do you know what? That's silly. Let's go to YouTube. And I have a baby on my arm making typing very difficult. So we're gonna royalty free intermission music. Cool. That was an easy find. We're gonna, oh, Kevin MacLeod. He is amazing.
Why does that sound familiar? Where have I heard that from? Oh, I think that plays on
It's Kevin MacLeod.
overly sarcastic somethings on YouTube.
Look.
Red and Blue. What are their names?
I'm not sure, but Incompotech.com makes Kevin MacLeod. He makes some of the best royalty-free music ever. I've been using his stuff since film school.
What's wrong? Why is there a white bar across the top? I don't know. Anyway, don't care. So, yeah.
Moving on with life.
So she hears the sound and she starts telling, and so they start going back and forth about whether or not this little girl's like
Crazy
onto
what's
something
going on.
And they have this great moment because she's up by the window and they're all sort of standing in a loose group behind her, and the people at the back are the Brit and Brian.
Brian and the Brit have an aside where they're saying she's crazy.
And Brian even whispers at one point, and then she turns around and says their conversation back to them verbatim, including the whisper. And she does the British part in British accent, and everyone's like, "What the hell are you doing, Dinah?" And
the
they're
only
like,
people who know what's going on are Brian and
those
the
two.
Brit because they were having the aside, and they're like, oh shit.
And that's the moment where everybody's like, maybe there is a sound out there.
It's kind of beautiful because they play it off almost like she's a psychic at a show.
Yeah.
And she's picking out the one person in the audience who's a skeptic. And then she calls out the skeptic and she's like, well, your grandmother has a message for me.
That is one of the interesting things he does. Like, one of the tropes with Stephen King's writing is the kid with the power.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, in The Shining, the little boy has The Shining. But in this one, they did something interesting, at least for the characters in the story, is that they gave her basically a supernatural power, real world, the Daredevil.
Yeah.
Which precludes her real power. And whether or not that woke up because she went blind, or if she had it before she went blind, either way, it's a great, like, wait a minute, what is happening? Where does the excellent hearing end and something else begin with this kid? And
I believe Brian and the Brit have a conversation. I think it's this conversation where the Brit is like, she's training her other senses to make up for her lack of sight.
Mm-hmm. They're
extra powerful because of her lack of sight. Well, what other senses, like you said, does she have? Is this a superpower or is this an extra special sense?
I think it's the teacher that starts to figure out she's got something else going on before that, which the less said about her character, the better. But she's the first of the people that start going, okay, there's something else going on here with this kid, like beyond the excellent
Does she?
hearing. Yeah, she's the one. She's the one who's like, no, she like, I,
That was actually one of my complaints with her is you have glommed to this child. I don't know why, but now you're spending the most time with her. You're not seeing the signs of what's happening with this child.
I think she's the first one who starts noticing
Okay.
the supernatural stuff. But I could be
Maybe.
wrong. So anyway, so they go back to they go back to the restaurant they were in, and Toomey wanders off. He has his little breakdown, the second breakdown with his dad. This one's a little bit more out in the world, but he's not around people right now.
Yeah.
And again, he keeps talking about needing to get to Boston by 9, and his dad's like, "You failed. It doesn't matter that you were kidnapped. Yada yada yada." Like, and he's coming down on him so hard. God, what happens?
He has a little argument with his dad.
Yeah. I think that's more or less just the gist of that one, is he starts
just
arguing back in that one.
Realized that there is a really good, I didn't even realize it until you just kind of mentioned it. Stephen King does a real good job of having Toomey's inner psychoses gradually come out more into the world.
Yeah, yeah.
So first,
well, and that's what I was talking about with like
yeah.
the Langolier mention that starts becoming a full-on like thing
out
out there. Yeah.
Because it starts with his dad's freak out being memory, and it escalates to full-on hallucination conversations with dad, who's been dead for 2 years.
Did they say 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
they don't mention how he died.
I
noticed that on this viewing, is they don't mention.
She did ask, and he says the Langoliers got him. Or
no, she said, did the Langoliers get him? And he goes,
yes.
Yep. And that's when she turns around, she's like, all right, now he's full of shit.
I'm guessing, because he said, too, something about he didn't die on his feet. So I'm guessing he got old and he got sick.
Yeah. Did he lay down and did the Langoliers? Yeah, something of that effect. I will say, when I was watching it today, and this may have more to do with my original experience with this movie. Because when I was a kid, he was just a businessman trying to get somewhere, to a meeting, and it was just one of any number of billion meetings that he would take in the world, but each one is the most important thing, and definitely more important than anything that was going on with anyone else. But as I watched it as an adult, he wants to get to that 9 a.m. meeting in Boston to tell them that he deliberately lost $43 million. And so I'm not sure
to get fired to get free of his father.
And so I don't know if there's a conflict of interest in the way he was written, because he comes off as the businessman who's got a meeting that's more important than anything. But also, he doesn't care because he wants to get fired.
Although, if it
So is that a conflict, or is that just a conflict of my two different perceptions of him at different points in my life conflicting?
It could be... I think that, honestly, harkens back to the complication of the character. So, just like Brian's ex-wife dying, and his emotional inner world over that is so complex, I feel like Toomey's meeting is a complex inciting incident for him. It is life and death that he gets to this, because it is the moment where he will be able to finally break free and be his own person. It is the biggest thing he has ever done in his entire life, both literally and metaphorically.
So this actually adds some depth to him, whether intentional or not, from just being businessman MD to, I don't know what that means, to get out, because he was raised to always be doing. Mm-hmm. To get out, he has to always be doing the thing to get out. Mm-hmm. Even if getting out is to not be doing the thing anymore. That's good. Intentionally or otherwise, that's good.
I actually, on our first watching, felt like, aside from Dinah, because Jesus, his story was the most tragic because he never got his catharsis. He
He did,
never got
though.
his freedom. No, he didn't.
Yes, he did. Which is funny to me because he both got it and then didn't. And I think, should we put that off, or do we
Let's
want
put
to
it
get
off.
on to it now?
Because he didn't get it. Anyway, he continues to go crazy. He goes so crazy that eventually he starts seeing the other passengers on the plane as being the Langoliers or working with the
Yeah, he starts
Langoliers.
thinking they are. He
And
thinks Dinah is the head Langolier.
and that's when he becomes an actual physical danger to everybody else on the flight.
Well, that actually happens after he gets the gun. So he gets a gun, and he decides that he's going to take a hostage to get them to fly him to
Force them
Boston.
to
And he
fly
gets
him to
the
Boston.
teenage girl, and he's got the gun, yada, yada, yada. And they've already done all the match stuff and the fizz and the whatnot and the food, and it's all not there. And
Oh, and with the match stuff and the food and the fizz, they figure out that the fuel on the plane
not quite yet, but yeah.
isn't gonna work.
Yeah, they do that in a little bit, but yeah, basically they want to refuel the plane to fly out, but they're like, but since nothing here has potency, ooh, that's a good way to put it. Nothing
Yeah.
has potency. It's just completely devoid of it. The jet fuel that we pump out is not going to work. But anyway, so he grabs the teenage girl. She bites his arm, and then the teenage boy goes to hit him with his violin, which is the thing I've said now, and he
Have you
gets
ever been
shot.
hit by a violin?
Yeah, well, okay, case. Yeah, these cases are hard. And he gets shot at like almost point blank range, and the bullet does nothing to him.
But he still faints, which honestly, I would too, bro.
Well, I think, yeah, you could write it to
Because
he's a
I've-
nerdy teenage boy who fainted, but also he still got hit by the bullet.
Which
It still
probably
may have come
hurts
out
like a bitch.
maybe not as hard as a blank, but I'm sure it still had some force to it.
I mean, have you ever been hit by a paintball gun at point blank?
I have indeed, my pledge father. We were in paintball. It was like this outside thing. It was a lot of fun. We both got out, and I was mad too because like I got unicorned basically. I got shot right in the visor, and it just went white. So anyway, we're standing out and we're just sitting there talking, and he just lifts it and just puts it right at my sternum and just blows me away.
Pledge dad, you
Pledge
said?
dad
Oh
did
my
that.
god.
I was like, you asshole, dude. The bruise. That
Was
shit.
probably
I mean,
legit.
like the barrel was here. Like it was so close. I dropped. Like there was no time from getting shot and hitting the ground at all.
I shot myself in the leg at point blank to see what it felt like. With the paintball gun. With a paintball gun.
Where is your self-preservation? Where is that? Is that in? Did you just laugh until you farted? Was that you?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Was
Must have
there
been.
a-
I think
Oh
there was
my
a toot,
God.
and I think it was
I didn't
baby
even
girl.
hear it.
You
Oh
laughed
my
and made the baby
God.
fart.
I loved it till the baby tooted.
Oh god. But anyway, so yeah, so bullets have no impact, yada yada yada. They tie up Toomey, and that's when Dinah and Toomey have the conversation. And that's where she learns from him what
about
the
the
Langoliers
Langoliers.
are. At
And-
least to him.
And she's very invested because she's like, I think that she knows that he has somehow clicked into this idea of what is in the past that comes for the present.
Okay, so I may be wrong, and there is some evidence that I found that might conclude that I'm wrong, but this was my take on it. She assigns to the creatures the same thing that Toomey does. They are the two children in this story. Yeah, he's 30s, 40s, whatever, but they are the two most childlike minds. And they assign this Langolier.
And do you know what? That's kind of good because there is this sort of psychological theory that until you can heal your inner child, you can never grow up.
Yeah, and when he's
And
got very
since-
childlike behaviors in this.
And his inner child has never been healed.
Well, he never even got to be one, really.
Yeah.
There's no child to heal. It's just a big empty void.
And all of his
liminal space.
Ooh, and all of his tantrums are very childish.
Yeah, yeah. He stamps his feet and but my interpretation of it is that she hears something coming, and she is the kind of person who has premonitions.
Mm-hmm.
Literally by hearing other people's thoughts. That's premonition behavior. So she can see the world through that lens. So she sees him raving on about the Langoliers, and she sees that as premonition. They aren't the Langoliers. They are the timekeepers.
Yeah.
But I love the way, and I'm just going to get into this now. I love the way this story inflicts that psychosis on this totally unrelated thing. And we know they're totally unrelated, at least in my mind, because the description of them does not match what we end up seeing in the end. He says they have tiny little feet that run fast, they are hair and teeth, which
Yeah.
they are just sort of teeth and a body, but they don't have legs, like he is, and they don't have hair.
And he doesn't talk about the claws. Or no, he talks about they have claws or something.
Did they say claws?
Maybe it's just the dad keeps doing his fingers like claws.
And that was, I think, supposed to be the teeth. But, like, so they're similar, they're, like, adjacent, but they are clearly not the same description of creature. Like, what we literally see and what he was told as a kid.
Yeah.
So I think that's real strong evidence that the Langoliers, and that's what I love about this. We never see the Langoliers. They don't exist. They are called that because of the psychosis of two children.
Yeah.
That is so cool to me. Because what do children do but give things weird names?
Like your son gives everything weird names.
Monkey Bird.
That's or Baba.
Baba. What was Monkey Bird? What did we decide Monkey Bird was?
Well, he got Monkey Bird from the lullaby. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird.
Mockingbird. And then Baba was up Baba, world so high.
Right.
Like it was just.
But it's the name of the moon.
It is Baba is the moon.
But Baba is like an actual person.
Right.
Right, because remember Baba bumped his head and he's not okay, and he gave Declan a fork to eat his applesauce with, and now he's asleep with you on the comfy chair at home.
Yeah, that did get weird and creepy.
It got so weird.
There's that element. And granted, the Langoliers, actually, the name comes from his dad. But either way, it's that element of children assigning an identity to something unrelated, or vice versa. And the fact that it's rooted in this psychosis gives it so much. I don't know. There's something there. I think you get what I'm saying. Yeah. I don't know how to word it, but like, love it. It's good shit. It's good.
Really good.
Okay. There's an element of self-prophecy to it. That, self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
That you think of things so much that it comes into being.
I did say that at one point we were watching it, and I said, did Craig actually, manifest these things into being?
You did think that he was somehow influencing time, or the source of the time problem, or the harbinger of the creatures, which, again, thematically, I think he is. Not literally, but, there is that element there. Excuse me.
Because I know that there's been stories about that before, where somebody has a power and they don't know it, and then they get a psychological injury, and that injury forces these things into existence. A really, really bad but still potent example of that is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in Ghostbusters. He thought it into existence.
That's sort of the opposite. He went for something that couldn't harm him, though. And the deity warped that.
Either way, it was an intrusive thought.
It just popped in there. Is what he said. I was using it as evidence. The fact that the Langoliers look like little dark and milk chocolate jalapeno poppers doesn't have a...
Oh my god.
But yeah, so anyway, they meander around and they start, they're discussing what to do. I think the next big thing is Craig getting loose.
Yeah.
And he gets somewhere and he gets a knife. And he's about to kill himself. Well, when he had the gun before, he held it up to his mouth. And then he went to go do the hostage thing. And then he gets the knife and he does it again. And his dad says, I'll tell you when to something. And he goes, okay, Dad. And I was not quite sure if he was being sarcastic or if it's like, Daddy's in control now. And I'm not really sure.
There was this weird grin comfort thing.
That was 100% Balky, by the way. Creepy to see on this guy. Like, because Balky's got this big dopey grin, and when he does it for this character, it's got that Joker vibe. Like, it should be making me happy, but I'm scared and hit my head.
I'm scared and hit my head. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Just bonked it.
No, and I think that's one of the few issues I have with this miniseries is I feel like that actor put his whole ass into this broken psychosis, and I feel like he didn't have a whole lot of direction, because if he did, some of the borderline psychoerotic would have been correct.
He does look like he's having an orgasm one time when he's tearing the paper.
More than once. And then that one where he says, "Okay, Dad," there was like a level of satisfaction in his face that was disturbing.
You might be right, but then again, but I also just see Balky, but Joker.
Balky.
So,
and it looked to me too much like the same face he made when he was tearing the paper.
I kind of see what you're saying.
Like,
it's hard for me to divorce that from Balky, though. So I feel like that's just him pulling from that childlike character that he had previously played and or was concurrently playing. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
You might be right too, though. I don't know. It's up in the air. Like, I like your perspective on it because you don't have that Balky baggage. That Balkage.
That Balkage. No, but I really want to watch Perfect Strangers now.
You don't. You listen to the theme song and then turn it off.
And then turn it off and be done.
It's Home Improvement, but like not as good. Like it's that type of writing, like where it's like, oh, he's gonna go ho, 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 every episode, and he's gonna say, I don't think so, Tim, every episode, and, but worse.
Anyway, he goes crazy.
I have a plan. It's a perfect stranger. Perfect Stranger Things, man. That dude. The friggin' Demogorgon really has vibes of the meatballs.
Oh, it does.
Like the mouth.
Really does.
Like they have 3 mouth thingies and that thing's got 4, but like vibe.
Moving on. He freaks out.
Gets the knife. Hides. Dinah hears him in the thing behind.
She hears his heartbeat. She pulls out full ass Superman.
Yeah, and then he comes out and
she doesn't just hear his heartbeat. She describes its rhythm and its pacing and infers his emotional state from it.
She really is empathizing with him. And she's trying to reach out to him. She's like, I know you're scared, yada yada.
Which honestly, I feel like her empathize. I'm sorry, when a supernatural child has sympathy for you, I'm probably going to sympathize with you as well. Honestly.
And then he comes out and stabs her.
Yeah.
And that was like right in the chest, breaks off the blade.
And then goes running. Also, right before this, she had already been telling them it's very important he comes with us.
No, that doesn't happen yet. That's what's really cool about this. And that was my moment later. We'll get there. No, she does not do that until right before they go to take her on the plane.
I thought that she had already told Laurel, we need him.
No.
Oh.
She doesn't say that until later. Which kind of gives a revenge element to it. Like just Anyway, we'll get there. So he stabs her, runs off. Nick, I think is the Brit's name.
Yeah.
Nick, finally! Where are we in? Hour and 8 minutes in. Or
48 minutes.
40 hour. Oh, yeah, 108. So he's got to do some impromptu surgery, pulls out the blade. Teenage boy and token guy. Sorry, that's who he is. Did not give him a lot.
Craig.
Mr. Gaffney, I think is his name. Go to find a stretcher and arm themselves. Gaffney's got 2 knives and teenage boy has Albert. Albert's the teenage boy's name. He's got a sheet with a toaster in it. He's like, I broke my brother's arm once doing this.
Which, I'm sorry, that reeks of real world experience from the author.
Which is another one of those elements that, he wrote it in his hometown, but write what you know.
I'm not complaining of it. I
No,
think
I
it's
don't think you are.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Put a toaster in a bag and swing it around like Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's hilarious.
Which, spoilers, that is what ends up taking Toomey out, at least at this point in the
Mostly.
story. Actually, I noted it. There's the nose thing, and that's the first blood drawn on Toomey, and then he gets hit with the violin, but he doesn't bleed, but he gets really sweaty, and it really makes his shirt ruffled. And then, so we get this scene where those two go down to find a stretcher, and they go in the room, and it's actually really good because he's been in the room tearing up paper, and he hears them outside. Toomey does, and he goes to hide behind the door, and they go in. Albert notices the torn up paper, and he's like, "No, he's in here," and that's when Token, Mr. Gaffney, gets stabbed.
Yeah.
And it was a great setup. Like, he saw it coming, and that's what gave him the warning, but it wasn't fast enough. And then him and Toomey get into it, and he brains him. He gets him in the back and brains him twice.
Yeah, with the toaster.
And that's like third blood on Toomey. And I just love it. I love the progression of his injuries getting worse and worse. I will
say I love how Toomey could not be taken out until it was a supernatural creature.
And we're not talking about the Langoliers. So anyway, Albert's down there crying. Nick is like, where the fuck are these guys? He's already pulled the blade out of
I will say the actual medical stuff is my only complaint in this miniseries. Gaffney got stabbed in the back, but died. Like, no.
Immediately.
Toomey got brained twice with a toaster in a bag. I'm sorry. Weight plus velocity plus mass equals death. And then with the blade, you wouldn't pull that blade out.
Well, I get why they did. I think that makes sense, though, because they had to move her onto the plane.
But then that creates a sucking wound, and they didn't have a way to treat that. Do you know what a sucking wound is?
Well, he also wasn't a doctor, and that's a really good, important thing that he brings up later when when Nick has his freak out, British guy, is that he doesn't know if she's going to make it. I'm a soldier, not a doctor. He did what he thought was best in the moment.
Either way, he would have, especially as a soldier, had something more along the lines of first aid training. I've had first aid training to know what a sucking wound is. Not necessarily to treat it, but to know what it is. You have to keep that shit covered. Do you know what a sucking...
Well, they put pressure on it, and they put a belt around her. Like, that was a big plot point. So as soon as he pulled it out, teacher put the...
I think I'd have left the blade in.
So...
Like, that's first aid 101. You leave the thing in the injury. That's why... Crocodile Hunter died.
Because he pulled the spear out.
Because he pulled it out. He would have been fine if he just left it in.
Potentially. So I agree you're probably right. Don't have any medical training, but from what I've heard, that sounds accurate. But I think this is more thematic to Nick. Nick is a killer. He doesn't know how to keep things alive. Whether or not that's intentional, I'm calling it as good. He only knows how to kill.
Well, my only issue past that is... the storyline keeps her alive long enough for her to finish out the plot, which, like, she wouldn't. She would have suffocated.
Well, I mean, considering she was stabbed dead center, maybe it only nicked her lung as opposed to pierced it.
Okay, you don't know what a sucking wound is, do you?
Can we move on? I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
It's actually pretty basic. So, in your chest cavity... your lungs are able to stay big because of a very delicate pressurized system.
You pierce that system at all, and you deflate the tire.
And your lungs shrink. Because the pressure coming in pushes against the lungs, and they don't have the strength.
And you're breathing out, and
they don't have the strength to push against it. So you can't catch a breath. You will suffocate just because your lungs don't have room to expand.
95... made-for-TV movie series.
Okay,
miniseries.
Fine.
Ugh.
I'm just saying somebody could have done another pass on the script. At this point, with King being what he was, his editor probably could have called in a medical... somebody to give it one pass. Anyway, I'm just saying.
The movie's good enough and bad enough that I don't care. Like, the things that are bad about it are, at this point, for me, kitsch... and just sort of add to the charm. Again, the clothes disappeared. I'm fine with it. Like...
maybe that's just because Michael Crichton spoiled me.
theory. Okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna fix this with physics. There are no physics.
Oh, because they're in that weird ass time void.
We haven't even really said what they're in. So basically, they realize, I think about halfway through, not quite halfway through, that they went back in time, and unlike in Back to the Future, where you can witness events in the past, you go to 1955 and you see your parents meet each other, yada yada yada. You enter in a sliver that needs to yet be deleted. It is just it's just waste. It's the poop of the universe basically. It's discard. And that's why there's no people because they are still moving forward in time. This is all just the echoes of the past, winding down and diminishing in potency to the point that it no longer exists.
Well played, Mr. Spock. Well played.
Which Vulcan neck pinch on the nose.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
was a very poorly delivered line on Nick's part,
But still kind of beautiful. I'm sorry. Also, I was just tickled pink at the idea that a sexy McSexy face British Queen's mechanic had any idea who Spock was in the 90s.
it was not done well. But whatever. Anyway, so Nick goes to find them, but before he does, that's when Dinah says, "Don't kill him. Don't kill that man. We still need him." And that was the moment where I went, "Oh, fuck me. Dinah's a cold bitch." Because I knew from when I'd seen it back in the 90s what happens. Craig, let's just say she set up his death, and we'll get there. But like that was the moment where I was like, "Oh my god, Dinah's awesome." But so he goes down there, he collects Albert, gets the stretcher, and he goes to kill Toomey. He hears her voice in his head. He doesn't do it. All right?
But he doesn't take him with him either. He doesn't collect
No,
him.
no, no. But he leaves him alive. Meanwhile, they've figured out that when they take things from the dead world onto the plane, they spring to life after a period of time.
Minutes.
So matches work, fizz comes back in soda, flavor comes back. So they decide, oh, maybe if we pump jet fuel in, we can get this bird off because they're out of gas. We can get this bird off the ground. So it takes them a couple hours, but they start loading up the plane, and that's when the sound in the distance really starts getting
really
loud.
Picks up. Oh, we've got to backtrack because I was going to talk to you about the Rice Krispies sound.
Okay.
So I actually really love the way that she described the sound for a number of reasons. She's a 9-year-old. What kid in the 90s especially didn't freaking love their cereal on a Saturday morning?
Which, considering she's got the ears of an angel,
and that was the other thing is
that is how she would associate things. Is entirely
as a 9-year-old kid, nothing sounds as good as that milk hitting those Rice Krispies in the morning and that snap crackle pop that they make. I mean, it was part of their advertising campaign, snap crackle pop. But if you have a hypersensitivity in one of your sensory factories, that would be the worst sound in the world. It would be so loud and so intrusive. It would be like the way the kids scream and squeal, Declan's high-pitched little and the way it just shuts down your brain.
Oh, God.
That snap, crackle, pop
would be that for her.
If it was right up in your ear like that.
I do like that they talk about when he's tied up, before he gets loose and gets the knife and whatnot, he and her are talking that they both hear it. And what's interesting to me is he probably doesn't hear it. He probably hears it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where we go back to that childlike mind thing. Like, he's associating it. He hasn't heard shit yet, but he's heard her talk about it, and now he's projecting that. Now he's,
And they have that weird, like, toxic symbiosis. But because of that, I love the way that she described it. I loved it.
Delivery wasn't great. I do really like what you said about it, though. I think that's and what plays into what I was saying about the childlike mind. Like we're doing that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
And
what's being projected on this world
it's so
or
visceral too,
event.
because you describe it and like you and I both found 10 other sounds immediately in the world that we could be like, yeah, it's just like that. It's just like that. It's just like that.
Speaking of
So-
childlike minds, so I forgot one of the establishing things in the movie is when Brian is walking with his boss, being told, you know, you can get on this red eye flight, deadhead, whatever. He's like Brian, because he's a pilot, asks, "What's the weather like?" Oh, it's overcast, it's cloudy, yada yada yada. Oh, and there's an aurora borealis over the Mojave Desert. And he's like, "This time of year in California, what?" That's actually how they got to this world.
Yeah.
Was the aurora borealis. 1995 is when that was. And I feel like maybe there was
bizarre
like
weather.
maybe there was like an element of the aurora being a doorway to other worlds in the 90s. Do you have any other instances of that? Because I have one, but I want to hear if you have any.
I mean, I've heard before in old mythological folklore that it's like at the end of the rainbow kind of a thing. You chase the aurora borealis to find the realm of the gods, or monsters come through during monsters come through to us during an aurora borealis.
The leprechaun gold and then the rainbow bridge in Norse mythology. Okay. So what I was getting at is literally a doorway. Maybe this is when it was hitting popular media at the time, that mythological element. They did that for Digimon.
Oh.
They're at summer camp, it starts snowing, and then Aurora shows up and the doorway opens and it pulls them in. And they use that consistently through the world of the first 2 seasons of that show.
I want to say I've heard something when I had my witch phase, because I'm a girl and I was 12, so I was a witch for a minute, apparently. I want to say that there were spells.
Oh boy, looking forward to that.
Yeah. I want to say that there were spells that you did specifically during the Aurora Borealis era, or if you could get underneath one, because there was a thinning
connection
of the veil between our world and whatever other or something. Like, I've heard that before, that the Aurora Borealis is a reflection of the thinning of the boundary between our world and this one or this one or this one.
So that's got mythological precedence, and maybe the 90s is just sort of when it kicked up in modern media.
Or just
or
when
in,
it got...
media.
It's like the Titanic. Everybody was always kind of into the Titanic, but in the 80s when they actually found it...
It kicked up.
It got popular again.
And I bring that up not just for the parallel of the Aurora Borealis, literal portal to another world, but there are elements in this dead world that really are very similar to the digital world in Digimon. Like,
oh, yeah. Yeah.
You notice later when the ground starts getting destroyed, I won't say how yet, but there's nothing underneath it. And, like, a lot of times when Digimon get destroyed, they're literally just an image with nothing inside. Like when they lose a limb, it's hollow inside. And then it's got these creatures that completely defy physics. And it's just, there's like a lot there. And I'm like, did the fucking Japanese watch this movie? And we're like, I'm doing that. And well, also the element of children projecting an image onto something and creating a new reality out of it. Like that is, there's so much in Digimon about the child's imagination is what fuels this world and also allows them to enter it.
Well, that was kind of an 80s, 90s theme anyway. I mean, you think about Neverending Story. He solved the story, or he ended the story by giving the Never-Ending Princess a name. Or the Never-Ending Empress. He gave her a name, and that brought all of the nothing, or chased away all of the nothing, and it brought imagination back to this fantasy land.
What was the name of it? Eternia? No, that's He-Man. What was the name of that place?
Fantasia?
Fantasia. I knew it was something with an at the end. But no, even on a lesser note, like you're right, 80s, 90s, well, I think it was 70s, but Elliot from E.T. Like, he was the one that connected with the being, the super... Like, fuck it. I mean, like, he's an alien, but he could have been from another dimension, which is supported because they're in Star Wars.
The kid in Warriors of Virtue, when he had self-belief.
Cannot My brain cannot hold the details of that movie. It is impossible. Oh, it's like the dilemma. I know it exists. I know I've seen it. Couldn't tell you a thing about it. So, but no, I think that more or less covers all my Digimon points. But like,
if you're going to make me watch whatever other movie you quoted in this for us to review, we're going to review Warriors of Virtue.
bitch. Look, all right. Anyway, last point on the Digimon thing. I've mentioned that Dinah has that Kari element, and this is where it starts rising up as she gets closer to passing through to death, to dying, piercing the veil. Her powers seem to get stronger, and she appears to Toomey with a light behind her, and she's like fine, like she's just standing there, and she's got that real Kari vibe when she gets possessed in the first season. And that's not entirely why I love this. I would say most of it has to do with the fact that she really comes off more as an angel of vengeance.
Yeah.
Like, there's a pettiness to what she's doing, and I love that for her. Like, you get it, girl. This is your moment.
Dark.
I love it because she appears to him as a boon.
Yes.
She's appearing as an ethereal, angelic entity saying, I did the thing for you. I brought the thing you wanted. And she uses that as bait. We need him so I can fuck his ass over. So what she ends up doing is creating an image of the meeting he wanted to have on the tarmac away from the plane. So we see all the electricity towers in the distance start collapsing. Like, shit's getting bad. We're in 11th
and they're
hour.
Like, go, 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 go. They're rushing to fill the plane with fuel.
Mm-hmm. The sound is deafening. Two guys at the base of the ladder of the plane see Toomey walk by, and they're just like, what the fuck? He's like covered in blood. And he's running, and he sees the board people. And they're like, how much money did you make for us? I didn't make any money for you. I lost it. I did it deliberately. And he has his catharsis.
And I argue that it's not a catharsis because the head of the board goes from being whoever the head of the board is to
Which is actually Stephen King, by the way.
Oh, is it really?
That was Stephen King.
Oh, that's kind of neat.
That's why he looks so stupid. Stephen King looks weird. No offense, but like, you look weird, dude.
I mean, he's an author. Look at you.
I'm not even an author. I just look weird and I write shit, but I don't get any money for it.
But he goes from being the head of the board to Toomey's father. And
that's where the catharsis ends.
He takes it back.
Mm-hmm. No. She takes it back.
Which is so tragic. And I don't think that she necessarily projected the whole thing. I think she suggested.
And he created it.
And he created his own, not hypnosis.
Scenario, whatever. Projected.
Hallucination.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, yeah. I don't know how easy it is to suggest something to somebody who hallucinates and then they hallucinate that.
But that's why I had that moment when she said we need him when she was dying. Because I was like, oh, she does this shit to him. She uses him.
She knows.
And that ultimately is what unfolds. He ends up being the bait that draws away what we are calling the Langoliers as they appear in their full 90s CGI glory.
Oh my god, I just put something together.
What's that?
So you were talking about his blood.
Yeah, he gets progressively more disheveled.
So they get, I guess you could say, a taste of him, and then they're chasing his whatever.
His essence.
They start eating everything where he was. So instead of eating the airplane first, they're hitting the terminal. What if it's because
they're going backwards through his
time,
his trail, because he would have gotten off the plane, gone into the terminal, done all this stuff in the airport, and then crawled out and went to the board meeting, and they started there.
What if it's that they got a taste of blood and they wanted more? So they were going to the places where he bled, he sweat the most. And that's why they went for the plane last.
That's interesting. So, I don't think there's anything else we need to cover before we really get into them. Is there? I don't think I've
Not
missed
really.
anything.
No, I think
Okay.
it's time to get into them.
So this is the point where I pause the movie. As soon as they start coming out of the woods, I pause the movie. I was like, "This is it. It doesn't get better." And I was fucking wrong. Okay, I was wrong because I was
You
like,
were.
"Joy,
You
enjoy
really
this
were.
moment because this is where it goes downhill." Because I remember the CGI was bad, and yeah, it not good.
Although that was a good place to pause
Mm-hmm.
because, I mean, using the Jurassic Park, it was the moment where the T-Rex leans its head out of the paddock or steps
Oh, and
out of
adds
the
a little bit
paddock,
more of that.
and then it goes from holding your breath to, oh,
Sorry.
oh, shit. So you let go of that breath, but it's not a good let go. It's the time to fucking run.
Yeah. This is when everybody sees them, and they come out, and they are these little. I'm going to show it to the camera. If you're on a podcast, you're not going to see it, but they're just little meatball monsters with teeth, and they've got 3 jaws,
I
no
wonder
eyes.
if they were supposed to be hairy.
No, they weren't because I've seen the practical effect that they were originally going to use, and it's basically this. So they've got chainsaw teeth that are constantly rotating and are chrome silver. The only difference between the CGI model and the real prop, aside from looking real, is that the teeth were kind of an opaque clear.
Oh.
It was sort of like a crystal almost.
Oh. I kind of like that. That, like, the only thing sharp enough to cut time would be a diamond. So they have diamond tipped teeth.
So that's what they're doing. They're trailing through the ground and everything and just eating it in a very sort of never ending story style where they just leave a nothingness under it, behind it. And it's just these weaves of them eating. And this was the point in the movie where I thought all of the air was going to come out. But I think for both of us, it didn't really have as negative of effect as it did in the 90s. And I have a theory about this. Do you want me to get into this now?
Go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the 90s, when that came out, the only effects people had seen in movies were puppets and green screens or rear projected backgrounds, yada yada. Everything that was effects in movies was real. Even if it was a green screen, whatever, it was still real stuff being projected behind the actors. And then the only CGI we'd ever seen was like basically the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. You can't even say Tron because some of the elements that were complained about in the original Tron were real effects that didn't come across well because of how they looked.
Well, it was either that or that weird net thing that they did in the pilot episode of Next Gen.
Yeah. So you really had a really clear division between like not okay CGI and the T-Rexes from Jurassic Park. Audiences in the mid 90s were only familiar with shit that looked real or looked bad and they disregarded it. And I think that's one of the reasons that Star Trek had the negative connotation it did in the 90s is because it was in that bad category. The people that were into it were people who loved the stories and the effects, that's a secondary thing. They weren't watching Star Trek for the effects. They were watching it for the concept.
Your special effects suck.
That's not the point.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
college humor video.
We just quoted a college humor video.
But now, you and I coming into it nearly 30 years later, we've seen a lot of bad CG in accepted, even revered movies. In Civil War, Captain America, the Tony Stark suits look horrible. Spider-Man looks horrible. But at that point, people were just ready to take it. In the 90s, especially with worse looking CGI, people just weren't ready to accept that little level of fake and suspend disbelief. They hadn't had MODOK in Quantumanium yet, which I love. He's my favorite element out of that really shitty movie. He's the only element in that. But like, also it's coming from a level of irony. And I think at this point, audiences can just fill in that gap where the effect fails. And for me, this movie fucking ruled from that point on. Like, bad acting and all, bad Beast Wars CGI and all, which may be another factor why I was okay with it, because I'm a Beast Wars file. It's not okay. I have a problem.
It's an absolute obsession.
It really is. But yeah, it was like it continued being good, bad effects and all. It really was the
It
first
really did get.
sci-fi original movie, is what it feels
Yeah.
like. Number like patient zero sci-fi original movie. This is or
Do you
patient
know,
one
that's a good
zero.
point. It had a sort of Tremors feel after this.
Tremors was practical effects in the first one and the second one.
Okay, we have literally watched every single
That's
Tremors
true.
movie.
From 3 onward, it does have those. And honestly, the CGI gets worse, but that's just a trend of films
It's
anymore. So,
okay. May I? Your small rant about CG made me think of something, and I now have a prediction. You just described the path to acceptance for AI as an art medium. Audiences now are not okay with it, but in
well, I've talked about that. Our kids are going to grow up in a world where where AI art is synonymous with art.
right.
That's the real problem. It's not us. I
What
mean,
what
they're
if
not the problem. The problem is the world they will be raised in will be normalized. We'll
what
normalize that.
but what if that was the same complaint in the 90s about CG?
I don't think that was it. I think it was really how, I mean, people wanted realism in movies through,
Well,
I would
their eye
say
had been
2012 was sort of the tipping point where people would accept.
their eye had been trained to it. But I mean, even in like the first Iron Man, some of their CG, oh shit, forget Iron Man, let's do Transformers. That CG was gorgeous.
Hmm.
It's still pretty gorgeous in most of the Transformers films.
But those original three were the best with their
But also
CG work.
they took the CG as a form and elevated it to art. So now there is like, I mean, that's probably part of why Marvel is suffering a little bit right now, because everybody's tired of the cheap bad just throw it together CG. What if AI takes the same trend? It's just kind of fun right now. Everybody's doing it. I had my own CG movie maker program when I was like 5, right? It's a dime a dozen, everybody's got it. AI right now, it's a dime a dozen, everybody's got it. But there are going to be those individuals who take it and make something truly amazing with it and elevate it to an art form, and everybody else who's not that invested are going to fall off and just appreciate the actual artists.
And then the Marvel effect will happen where people stop putting as much effort in and it turns to shit again.
And then we will get the next medium.
What the fuck comes after AI? Just like beaming shit directly into your head.
I mean, if I'm not going down that road. So anyway,
Holograms. Please be holograms.
anyway,
Like real ones where you just push a button and the thing fucking appears. Not on smoke. No, that's not. That's not a hologram. That's just magic trick.
right? Where were we at? Oh, CG, bad
Okay,
CG. So the CG was not actually that terrible, and I don't feel like it broke.
That
Okay,
was bad.
it wasn't
bad. It was bad.
It wasn't what you made me think it was gonna be. If you go into this thinking the CG is going to be horrendous,
It's genuinely horrendous.
then you're only gonna see bad.
But that's what I went in with. I went in, this is going to be the worst looking thing I've ever seen. And it was.
I don't think it was that bad. It was bad. The worst CG I've ever seen made it look like 2-dimensional, like cutouts moving across a 3-dimensional screen. Not really. I wish I did.
I think this is probably one of the worst CGI effects ever put to a movie.
These had actual weight, though. Like, they were cheesy. They were bad. They felt tangible. They felt like an actual thing. Like a weak thing, but a thing anyway.
I hard disagree. They moved just in insane ways at incredible speeds, and there were a couple of moments where they would do like a spin,
Yeah.
that felt like there was an object there, but for the most part, the way they moved through stuff, it was like a lightsaber moving through a person.
I'm thinking the shadows. I liked the shadows.
I thought they looked bad too.
Oh.
Maybe I have more of an eye for it, but I
That's
genuinely
very
believe this is the
possible.
worst looking CGI in probably in any movie I've ever seen.
It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I can't imagine what you were imagining. I really can't. Like it's genuinely awful. And yet, in a post Marvel world, aside from all that,
Mm-hmm.
the suspense, because they do effortlessly destroy. It's got that lightsaber vibe. Don't touch it. If it touches you, you're
Mm-hmm.
gone. And they milked Toomey's death a little bit. Like they want,
He ran too much.
he ran too much. They were
Like, they should have caught him a lot faster.
and they went through his leg first. Like why? And then they take a long time to eat. Like it's clear they're eating him as he's screaming, and it's going on for a bit. It should have been less than a second. So I get they did
Yeah.
it for drama.
If
But other than that, like the way they move through stuff, it's just gone.
yeah.
There is no, it is a lawnmower to air. Like I don't even know how to describe it. To cotton candy. Like it's just water to cotton candy. That's what it is.
Yes.
It's just it is zero from touch to death is immediate.
Which could be really well done and absolutely horrifying.
I think that's where the suspense maintains with this because they are just so effortlessly destructive. It's got
Yeah.
that blob vibe where it touches you, you're gone. Like there's no getting out of it. I guess that really is it because you think about like the Thing and the Blob and lightsabers, like those 80s-ish elements where you are just instantly fucked.
I kind of want to throw in the mummy scarabs in that.
Sorta, yeah, just because they move so fast. Like,
Yeah.
you get bit by one. Well, no, the one guy got one in him and it killed. Well, he hit the wall. He ran into the wall pretty hard. I think he killed himself with that.
I think it was already like eating his brain.
Yeah.
There wasn't.
It definitely went through his
was
head, I
done.
think. Either way, it's that like, you're so fucking fucked and it's too late to run.
That one scene where there's just the army of scarabs and the floor is covered and they're coming at you like, well, shit.
That's the end of that, yeah.
This is going to hurt.
That may have just been an 80s and 90s thing. Because, like, there's very little you can actually ultimately do with that. Because you've created such an unstoppable and inescapable thing. Which, for the 20 minutes they show up in their as the title characters
so
in
horrible.
I did the math. They're in the movie less than 7% of the movie. Because they're in like 20 minutes, and it's 3 hours long. Without commercials.
And do you know, something that they very clearly put in there, but it was weak, and I would have liked to have seen more of, and this is probably why Toomey ran too long, is I feel like these things had an element of playing with their prey.
I do feel like they were too malicious. They didn't come off as a force of nature, which is, I think, what they should have.
But it makes sense, too, if everything you eat is always static, if everything you hunt never moves, how exciting would it be to see something that does once in a while? And some kind of real world perspective on this. This is going to break your heart a little. I'm so sorry. You've watched Blackfish with me, right?
Oh, the way Tillicum played with the girl's body.
The way he just played.
Yeah.
That's not the only one. But he's so bored that, like, he'll just play with a thing until it's dead. Hi, beautiful.
What's his name? George from Of Mice and Men?
Yeah.
Was it George or was George his friend? I can't remember. But either way, the big mentally disabled guy, he would pet mice until they died. And then he was like, what happened to the mouse? I feel like these things should have less agency. Being okay, and this is one of the reasons I think maybe they actually are Langoliers as opposed to just being called that.
Right.
because they do clearly have a maliciousness to them. There's that moment where they're chasing him and they're not catching him, which doesn't make sense, but whatever. And they look at each other and then they go underground and then appear up like right next to him.
Oh, I remember that.
There's like a play element that I don't.
I think part of that was the restriction of 90s television movie series CGI. But I would like for that
I thought it was
to
a good character moment for them, but I don't think they should have character moments.
I would like it to just be clearer. I would not mind them having a character moment. I would not mind them being forces of nature. But I feel like because they both were weakly portrayed, partly because of their 7% of the movie, which isn't a big deal.
You mean those two or all of them?
Just the creatures in general. Those two maybe specifically. I feel like
he's being chased by 2 Langoliers, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned that.
If you're gonna have these things have agency, make it very clear. If they're gonna be forces of nature, make that very clear. And it kind of didn't. Like, if they're smart enough to dive under the tarmac and then come up,
they're like octopus smart
above him, then they would have been smart enough to go for the plane before the terminal.
I have a feeling this has to do with the medium change. My guess is, and I don't know this, but my guess is that in the book, they're forces of nature, and that when it came down to bringing in animators, and I know a little something about animators for CG in the 90s, they like to have fun. Because they're there all day rigging this stuff on a Windows 95. All right? That was probably a little bit of the animators that they put into it. That those people put into it. I don't know that for a fact. I'd be willing to make that assumption. We good? Mm-hmm. Okay. But no, something you said actually clears up one of my plot holes with them not being the Langoliers. You said they were following Toomey's trail. Mm-hmm. Which one of the reasons I think they may actually be Langoliers, to poke holes in my own theory, is that they did go after him and they passed right by other people and didn't go for them. And like you said, they could have gone for the plane. They clearly were targeting him, right?
Right.
Because he was lazy, because he feared them. But if they're just the timekeepers, why would they do that? But you mentioned that they tasted blood or smelled it, and maybe that's why they followed him. Nobody else was well, I guess
Dinah was bleeding rather profusely.
But she was also in not only on the plane but in time.
That's true.
So they're obviously I'm assigning a lot of physics they probably didn't, but I wasn't quite clear on what was happening there. Why he was the target. Was it because he yelled? Because he sees them and then he freaks out, and then they see him and target him.
I will point out that what they said through the whole thing is his dad had this big scampering,
mm-hmm.
and he hates scampering. At that point, Toomey was so beat up and
running
worn out
without purpose.
When he was running, it looked like a scamper.
He even says Toomey, Craig says, they may be purpose personified. So if they see something that is acting purposelessly, and this isn't a mark in favor of them being actual Langoliers, that might be why.
Do you know something?
Because everybody else was doing something like to leave. They were all working.
But something I hadn't considered until you just said it is they were all on, near, or touching the plane. He was the only one who was not.
That's a good point.
And if the plane is the little pocket of right time...
That even plays into something that happened earlier. So the reason they decided to test the matches from the dead world on the plane is because the matches they brought from the plane started to not work in the dead world. So they realized that there was a give and go sort of element to it. Toomey hadn't been on the plane the longest. If Fade happens to time things outside of the plane, he was the one that
He
had
was
the
the one that
least
had the most
time.
fade happen, and he was also the only one who was either entirely not on the plane or hadn't been off on off on off on
Right.
off on. Because Brian, Nick, the writer,
The teenage girl, the teenage boy,
they were out.
the teacher.
No, Brian, Nick, the writer, and the teenage boy, they were all off of the plane at that point.
Yeah.
Granted, they were touching it, but they had just spent 20, 30, 40 minutes on the plane.
Recharging.
Exactly.
I know we put way more thought into this than they did, but like,
I wonder, I've got a feeling that King put this much thought into it.
maybe.
I do think that.
He definitely does for certain things and doesn't for
At the
others. So
very,
it's hard to tell with
have you
him.
ever read a book? Like,
No,
not watched his
never.
movies? Oh my god. So I've read 2 of his books. One of them, I do not remember the name, but it's about an artist who was writing under his own name and an assumed name. And when it came out that his pen name was him, they had this whole joke that, like, he murdered his pen name and now all of his books were coming out under his own name. But the pen name author comes to life and tries to take revenge for him killing his own pen name. It's actually really good.
Okay, so what does that have to do with overthinking?
It's actually really good. Not overthinking. So I've read that one and I've read Misery. The level of clear thought and planning and detail in these books is...
You're saying he's meticulous.
It's overwhelming. It is overwhelming, the amount of thought. And all of the writing, it's not consistently on point. There in every...
He has his weaknesses.
In the books that I have read, every single book, there is this small little something where you're like, eh. But for the most part, every single one of them, it's a hold your breath all the way through story. And they're real. They're tangible. They're...
I'm going to read this book. I'm just going to fucking...
I was just
novella.
thinking that we need to. Do you know...
I suck at reading anymore. I feel bad because it's a trait I lost. I used to love reading. And I don't know. Maybe it's because I became a dad. I just don't... It can't hold me anymore. The world broke me, man. It was Twitter or something. I don't know.
I mean, I can read, but it has to be a very specific something. Otherwise, honestly, I download it onto Google and I either do an audiobook or I make my Google Voice read it to me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to read it. Because it's just... There's so many elements that I'm hoping there's more to. And from what I've heard, this movie is one of the most faithfully translated from the book. It's got a few differences, and from the reviews I've read, I'm going to give a few at the end. But, man, like, I fucking love this story. Enough that I watched it at work today, 2 days after I watched it. Like, which, I mean, I have an obsessive personality, but, like, it takes a lot to get me obsessed with something. And this happened like that, so... Oh, love it, love it, love it, love it.
It's very, very...
So anyway, the Langoliers start eating. The 2 that killed Toomey sort of team up against the Jet, and they, like, cut pathways in the...
That's why I was saying there's, like, an intelligent, malicious playfulness to them. Which I like. There's also this... Oh my god, I freaking... This was my favorite part because it was so kitschy and so hilarious, but also, like... What else would you do? They're chasing the Jet, and they get in front of the front window, and Brian yells at him, Get out of here!
And they kind of look for a minute, and they're like, all right, and they fucking leave. But if you notice, what they actually do is go ahead of the plane and cut another trail. And he drives over it, but he's at speed enough now where the plane just bumps.
I love that he's yelling at him like an old man on his lawn to tell kids to get away.
And it makes me wonder, did they go away because he yelled at them? And they're just like, whatever? Or did they go away because it's like, the fuck is this? Like, it'd be like a T-Rex seeing a car. Like, what would it do? They've never seen a moving plane before.
Have you ever heard of a great white investigating? They do it all the time. So, there's stories of, like, surfboarders and kayakers and stuff, and they come across a great white, and it swims back and forth, and it takes a nibble. There's this one real famous story. I believe there's a GoPro of the front of the kayak. The guy's kayaking, and you can see the shark circling him, and then suddenly the GoPro just sees sky, and then it drops back down because the shark came up behind the kayak, put his chin on the kayak so he could look and just see what it was, and then he swam off again. Are you okay?
That's terrible. So anyway, I wish these things didn't have that agency. I wish they were just random, like, entropy, like, personified entropy, excuse me. But they're not, so we have to interpret that, and that makes it worse.
I feel like adding that, like, great white shark element of investigation and that animalistic, like, what is this?
I think that's ultimately what bothers me, is because they come off more as monsters, and I feel like everything about this movie has been about the absence. Absence of people, absence of, potency, yada, yada, yada. And then these things show up, and they don't have an absence of agency. I feel like they should.
They should be more like a wildfire or an oil spill.
Yeah, they're just hunger satisfying. There's nothing else. There's no other synapses going on. But I mean, it is what it is, and maybe the book will reveal that they were less.
I was gonna say, read the book. Maybe it'll reveal that they were more.
Oh, they do call them the keepers of Kime. You know what I meant.
Keepers of Kime.
But yeah, so they they fly off. Is there anything else? I don't think there's anything else. Toomey gets eated. And then, like you said, they start going through the airport as though they were following his trail. And he was kind of all over that thing.
And they said they're going where he was. Somebody said they are going everywhere that Toomey was.
This is definitely one of those movies where the characters tell you the reason a thing is happening. Like, that's one of the things I hate about Infinity War. I didn't clock it the first time I saw it, but when Thanos kills Loki and he's like, no more resurrections this time. That's a script note, not a character speaking. I hate that kind of stuff.
That's kind of why I was saying I like that some of our exposition comes in the form of a mental freak out. Because it's like a justifiable way to break the fourth wall. The only reason a fourth wall exists in real life is because schizophrenia,
Well, and it's another one of those next-gen elements. Because they're always saying, I fired a laser. It didn't hit. Like, I don't know how Star Trek pulls that off. And I'm not saying this pulls it off every time. But it's got that element to it. And again, they reference Star Trek, so...
I think Star Trek pulls it off because that is procedure on a ship.
Yeah.
Laser fired. Report? No report, Captain. No contact.
Star Trek's really good. But anyway, yeah, so they do and don't pull it off sometimes in this. But they take off. Just as the whole thing is falling apart. And you see, like, the last thing to fall in is the whole airport. And it just falls into black.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. Dinah dies. Yes. She dies.
After she murders a man.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Love it, love it, love it.
Well, she doesn't murder. She serves him up as bait to be ripped and torn apart by monsters.
The thing he feared the most, at least in his mind. Just glorious.
To give everybody else time to escape.
I feel like there was, like... I know that probably wasn't the way she was written. She was written as the magical girl character, Alakari from Digimon.
I mean...
But the way I interpret it here in 2024, in the dystopian future that we're living in, is that she went, we have to leave, I want revenge. How do I bring these things together? Like, I love it.
You know what it was? It was that old saying, I don't have to outrun the bear, I just have to outrun you.
Yeah. Real Sodom and Gomorrah energy from her. I love it.
She said, I don't have to outrun the bear or you. I just have to slice your Achilles tendon.
I have to give you a hallucination that there's a snack over there and you want it real bad. And also happens to be where the bears are. Also, you're bloody. Oh, God. It was so good. Like, that is easily the best point of the whole movie, is her gambit with him. And they play her like an angel, and that makes it so fucked up. I
Yeah.
love it. I cannot stress how awesome it is. Go watch the movie. It's so cool. Oh, so petty. You stabbed me, I fed you to the thing you're most afraid of.
Right.
That's why I noticed so Mr. Gaffney gets killed by Toomey, and Dinah gets killed by Toomey, but Toomey gets killed by Dinah, and that's the only other person to die, and that's coming up, aside from everybody.
So they fly back, they find the portal that got them.
The Aurora with the Skygina.
In,
Sorry. Oh, I stole that from Nostalgia Critic, and I hate him. Oh my god, why'd I do that? But yeah, they see the portal, and they're just about to fly through, and that's when Bob, the writer, goes, "No! Don't do it!" Because he figured out earlier in the film that everybody was asleep.
yeah.
And he sort of forgot it. He didn't mention it to anyone but Albert.
Right. And
And
then he's trying to figure out why was that important? Why did
something was
everybody
nagging in
else?
his brain, yeah.
And then they are at the doorway, and he makes them turn around.
And so they have to figure out, with 20 minutes to spare, because they have an hour flight time, and they need 35 to get to LAX after they leave the portal. So how are they going to pull this off? How are they going to get everyone asleep and then land the plane? Because they've got one pilot, and what are they going to do? And this is where that moment earlier in the film they set up with the pressure thing comes in, because they're all just like, we don't know what to do. How can we're all wired? How the fuck are we going to sleep within the next 20 minutes? Brian realizes he can lower the pressure in the cabin, and it will make everyone go into like low oxygen mode and pass out. Then the issue is, how do they wake up?
And somebody even asked, am I going to feel sick? Like, what's going to happen? He goes, no, you're just going to feel giddy and swimmy, and then you're going to go to sleep.
That procedural element again. Love it.
And then he got real specific, which again is why I think King, like, took flying lessons or shadowed a pilot. He was like, we're putting it to 7 PSI.
Yeah, he specifically mentions that number, which I'm assuming is... He says it's half sea level, something like that.
It sounds really damn good. Also, how did these poor people not get the bends?
Why would you get the bends from that? Is that a pressure related thing?
Yeah. So with the bends, if you go scuba diving, you have to allow your body to reacclimate to above sea level pressure, and
it takes a certain amount of time, right?
Exactly. And
do you know how long it is?
I think it's at least 24 hours, because I know you're not supposed to get on a plane for 24 hours after you go scuba diving at X level. Like, you can go so deep, but if you go X deep and then you get on a plane, you will get the bends. And it's 24 or 48 hours.
Well, he said half sea level. What's half sea level?
I don't know.
Is that down or up?
Sea level is...
Right, no, but what's half? What's half? Does that mean down or up?
I don't know.
I don't know. So, anyway.
I would assume down.
Fuck if I know. I assumed it was up, where the air is thinner. Because what he's doing, he's thinning the air until your body goes into preservation mode.
Right.
So I would assume that's up. Like mountain.
It must.
Because that's why people bring oxygen with them in the mountains, is so that they don't, pass out, because the air's thin.
It must be.
Yeah. So, anyway, but then they're like, but how do we wake up to land the plane? Because you can't land a plane without wakey people. So they decide someone has to die.
And they talk about, well, will we draw straws? Will we volunteer? Which also kind of, Brian was a little shitty here. He was like, well, let's draw straws. Bitch, you the one flying the plane.
I thought of that. He's like, I know I can't lose because I got to land the plane. I'm the only one who can't. I did think having him say that came across as shitty. I will give you that. That's the one moment where I was like, Bri, come on, man. But also someone had to say it, and they were on a time crunch, so, whatever.
But it would have been so much better for him to go, I'm flying, so y'all figure it out.
Dude, I'm fucking tired. Just sort this out amongst yourselves. But he decides to have Nick do it.
I'm flying, so you know what? You know what? I'm the driver. I pick the station. Eeny, meeny, miny, you.
Sorry.
You're
It's getting
fine.
late.
Nick volunteers.
Nick volunteers. This is after him and what's her name had their little. We should date after
We can
Dinah
have
got
a
stabbed.
we can have a thing. We can have a really real thing. We could be something.
And I feel like you could have cut that and still had the moment he had with her where he's like, "Go tell my dad this," and that's really good. The stuff he tells her feels like something from a real person that we don't
Yeah.
fully understand, but it's got enough to it. Or like, there's a whole story here. Basically, he tells her
It's
to
atonement
go
for what happened in front of the church, and if he doesn't believe you, remind him about the daisies.
the daisies I bought. Not the daisies I bought him, the daisies I bought. The time I got the daisies. Like, we don't know what that means. But basically, he tells Teacher Lay to go tell his dad, I was getting out. I was getting out of the assassination business because he was going to kill the side piece of a high-ranking politician.
As a warning.
As a warning, because they didn't want to kill him because that would have had negative political ramifications that they wanted to avoid at all costs, unless they absolutely had to kill him. So he was going to go kill an innocent side piece woman, and uh, and this is when he decided he was out. So and that thing between him and her, that was good, and they don't kiss at the end of that, and I feel like that you could have left in and cut all the romance stuff with them before and after that, and it would have worked. So he goes into the cabin. They have their kiss at that point, and everybody gets ready to sleep. They turn down the PSI, and he does the oxygen.
And he sees the
aurora.
portal.
Yeah.
And he's well, it's not just the aurora. I feel like
there's a slit in it.
I feel like at that point they make it very clear that it is a thing that cannot be visually represented.
Right, it's rainbow in design, like in visual, but it's not the aurora borealis.
But as they pass through, they don't show the aurora at all. They just show Nick's response to seeing it. It is literally the creation. It is the moment of inception.
He keeps talking about that, yeah.
This second. And it is so overwhelmingly beautiful. He almost looks like honored to die.
He is screaming, and he gives a really bad performance of "It's so beautiful" from that era. But okay, I'll take it. Again, kitschy, it's the Demolition Man effect. You watch it now, and you're like, this is amazing. The 90s kitsch and all the prophecy they did and all that. But in the 90s, it wasn't as good. So, one of the reasons this movie didn't do as well.
So he turns the pressure back on. They pass through. Everybody wakes up.
He vanishes, yeah. Which is the only time we actually see what happened to the people. So you kind of get an idea of what happened before they woke up the first time. It was just a big wash.
They land.
And there's nothing.
It's empty again.
But
there's smell. There's sound.
Echoes.
I will say something that I did notice and very much appreciated is in Maine, when everything was empty and it was the void, it was kind of desaturated.
I didn't notice that, and the characters were saying how everything looks specifically lifeless off the plane, and I didn't see that, but then again, I have some color issues with my eyes, so I don't. You're saying it did look desaturated.
But it was mild. It was so mild. And then in LA, everything was a little oversaturated, but again, mild. And when I say mild, it's like in Maine, it looked like there was just cloud cover on a really bright day. But in LA, there was no cloud cover and the UV was just a little high. It was that mild.
This may also be the late 2000s effect on me, where every action movie was oversaturated with blue and orange. Specifically the Transformers films, the first two. Like, all the people were orange and the sky was bright blue.
Yeah.
And it was like a big thing at the time.
Maybe it just...
So, but what I'm saying is, like, going backwards from that in 2024, I don't see that small percentage of saturation change.
Do you know, I honestly didn't... I don't think I consciously picked up on it when we watched it as being void, not void. Because it just looked in my brain like Maine, California.
A side effect, an unintentional happy accident of him choosing the main setting of the movie to be his hometown. It just
Yeah.
so happened to be Maine, which just so happens to be less saturated because of the cloud cover.
Well, I've never been to Maine. I've only seen it in film. I only assume that it's always kind of overcast.
It's like how everything in Mexico is sepia tone, and then you
Oh,
go there and you're like, it just looks like a place.
It's
just
actually really gorgeous.
yeah. But it's not like, you know, you watch The Good,
But
Bad, the
it's-
Ugly, and it's like,
But it is so bright. It's very much like California. Like when we went to California and it was just bright all the time. Do you remember? Well, it was kind of rainy when we were
yeah,
there.
it was overcast, I thought. But either way, so you saw something, that's fine. It probably was there then. Just in a much smaller percent than we're used to seeing in films now, between oversaturation. Because, like, you've got the Zack Snyder sepia tone,
Yeah.
and the, you know, like, friggin', what was it? Not Kill Bill. Sin City, where everything was oversaturated black and white. And you got your 300s and your Transformers, where it's just to like 90%.
No, this one was so subtle. It was,
you know,
perfect. It was like when you make eggs, scrambled eggs, and you sprinkle in just the perfect amount of salt and pepper.
You mean the way I make them?
No.
You hate the way I make scrambled eggs.
Not the way you make them.
But anyway, so they realize Writer Man figures out. Writer Man figures out that they're 15 minutes ahead. So they figured out that they jumped into a minute or a moment in time 15 minutes behind when they left.
Yeah.
And that when they came back through the portal, they were 15 minutes ahead, and time was catching up to them. Instead of being behind where time was, they're now ahead of it. And so they phase in, and some kids see them, and they're like, "Oh my God, people see us!" Yada yada yada, and that ends on this
kind of hilarious,
like sitcom freeze frame jump, and I'm just like, you have a dead
body on your plane.
What?
Which apparently to the rest of the world just appeared out of nowhere.
Which, like to point out, he almost crashed into the I don't know what to call it, the thing that plugs into the side of the plane for people to walk on.
I've always heard it described as a caterpillar. I think that was just a fun way that my mother described it when I was a kid.
But you know what I'm talking about. The thing, the arm that reaches out that you walk down to get onto the plane. They almost crashed into one. What if there was a plane there
that manifested into existence, and now your plane
occupies the same space and you've just created an atom bomb?
Well, they wouldn't have to explain the 9-year-old dead body.
God damn it. So dark. Oh my God. Oh.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know.
Sitcom ending.
Yeah, no, they literally jump and freeze frame.
It's the one with the plane and the monsters. Because Friends.
Yeah, no, I knew what you're doing. I don't watch Friends, but I got that. I guess my only two things are, the Langoliers were in 20 minutes at like 2 hours into a 3-hour movie.
Yeah.
It's so weird. But also the characters that named them are dead for like the latter third of the film, roughly, or aren't present at least. Because Dinah's not in it until her death scene. Which I think is like 40 minutes before the end of the movie. Maybe 30. It's just so strange to me, but it works. Like, I don't know why it works for me. And they, what Nick says, we're entering a Langolier free zone. And that's the last time they're mentioned.
No Langoliers allowed
beyond
past
this point. And it's the last time they're mentioned, so it sort of comes back around near the end, but like, I don't think it needed that. It's good it has it. It helps, but I don't think it needed it. It's just fascinating to me that this has got that Psycho vibe to it, where the main character dies 2/3 of the way through and just isn't in the rest of the movie. Your star... Have you seen Psycho?
No.
The Hitchcock movie?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I don't know.
No, it surprises me to realize that I haven't seen that movie.
Oh, you actually haven't seen it?
No.
Well, spoilers.
So it's kind of weird. We watched it in film school, but that day I got pulled from class for some admin paperwork stuff. So I was in and out of the classroom all through that movie. So I'm literally I do not know what I have seen and what I haven't.
Although I guess the inverse of the argument against that is that the title character in Psycho isn't dead. He goes through the end of the film. Norman Bates. This one, the Langoliers and the people that named them are dead, basically, or not present, basically 2/3 of the way through a 3-hour movie. So, but man, I don't care. I just enjoyed the hell out of it. It's got its weak points, but man, its strengths, especially in hindsight of like Marvel and just not being in the 90s anymore.
Yeah.
It's just a really good experience. And on this, I guess, third viewing, I'm still like, how you doing that? How are you this good for how shitty you actually are? Toothy meatballs and all.
Right?
That did have 2 flavors. Did you notice?
Yes.
There was like a dark chocolate and a milk chocolate one.
I was wondering about that. I was like, is it just 2 different triple coats? Is it male versus female?
They really are the tribbles from hell. And tribbles are pretty bad to begin with.
Tribbles are horrible.
So,
although at least they are not the super tribbles from Prodigy.
The teeth. Oh my god, are they just Langoliers? is everything Langoliers? Oh. So when the movie was ending, as they got through the portal and everything was still dead, I was trying to convince Joy that everything was bad. And I said they just went from one second to the next. The portal just, because they're getting further away from the reality they left.
I got so mad. I was like, at that point, I was like, I am done with this fucking movie.
I had her convinced that they just moved to the next second as time moved forward ahead, further and further away from them, that they'd never get home.
It's like, so does that mean they just have to pass back and forth through the portal over and over and over and over?
Which wouldn't work.
Everybody's going to die.
Someone would have to die each time, unless they figured out a trick. But, because I thought of that too. I was like, wait, could they actually do that? Could they perpetually survive in the dead world by bringing things on the plane?
And like at that
But then I was like, you got plane maintenance.
At that point too, it was like 1:00 in the morning, and both of the kids had just decided to wake up, and they were both sitting in my lap, and I was like, no, I'm not watching another hour of this while they try to figure out how to pop back and forth across this goddamn sky split. Again and again and again.
What's kind of great about this movie and Stephen King's in general is you don't know they're going to make it. Yeah. They killed the only child in this movie, and a girl no less, in the 90s. And she was white.
Well,
like, so many things and maybe another reason it didn't do well is that they killed, you just didn't kill kids in non-rated R movies.
Stephen King does it all the time.
In movies. Like, I think about The Blob killed a kid, and a kid you knew, and it was on screen and it was horrific, but that was an R-rated movie horror film. This was not a made-for-TV thing. And this, maybe that's another reason.
Maybe.
And clearly the most developed,
I mean, that
practically.
Because
she's got all these things going on.
Yeah.
The blindness and the powers and the what.
That makes sense because in Cujo, I know in the book, the boy dies. But in the movie, they pointedly make him survive.
And again, this is one of the ones that they say is most faithful. As far as book to movie adaptation. Which the only difference that I haven't read it, obviously I've seen it in a review, so I'm using a review in this review, but basically they get back and everything looks fine, and they've all got their nosebleeds from the pressure coming back and yada yada yada. But as they're celebrating, news reports come on of planes having disappeared, and you realize this is a widespread phenomenon. What that means and the wider implication, I don't know. I don't know if the book spells it out, but
Langoliers. 2.
Which there isn't one.
The Langoling.
Is that
I don't know.
Is it bad?
I'm sorry.
We should have ended on the other funny thing we laughed at that I forgot about. But yeah, denouement, seriously, like, just on enjoyability, I'm almost going to give this a 10 out of 10. Because I had, and you won't probably have this because I'm hyping it up. And I went in thinking it was going to be stupid.
I mean, go in knowing it is going to be
incredibly
stupid.
It is bad.
Take whatever extra thing you have to have in order to make it enjoyable, whether that is an alcohol or
a Toki Toke,
a stuffy, or Declan likes his stuffies. Our son.
I was like, is that
takes a doll?
Is there like a drug called that? Or are you talking about like a butt plug? What the fuck are you talking about?
I mean, if that makes your films more enjoyable, I'm not gonna judge.
But seriously, like, and I think a lot of it is that moment where I'm like, oh, she's a cold, stone cold bitch. Like she went and like they still play her up as the sweetheart, but I'm like, no, she's cold. That's awesome. I love.
There is a level of practicality and realism to that too, that is just like, how many lives you lived before this, Dinah? Like what shit you seen? Why you with your aunt, not your mama, Dinah?
How many other people has she Langoliered?
What don't we know about you, Dinah?
But yeah, it's got a lot of hallmarks for me. Bad 90s CGI, liminal spaces. Just some killer character moments, shallow as they may be in many cases. I fully recommend watching this movie. Maybe have a hit, maybe don't. Do what you do. But, yeah. 10 out of 10 experience. I would say 10 out of 10 movie. It's seriously like a 4. But the experience was just...
experience, I put it at like an 8. The movie itself, I think I'd actually put more at like a 6.
I got to give it points for that too, because there is a lot of... It was bad, but there was so much...
Look, if you just appreciate...
good unfolding.
The kitsch. All right, look, we're going to put it this way, all right? The movie itself is absolutely perfect scrambled eggs, like the kind you make with creme fraiche and just the perfect balance of salt and pepper.
Oh, this is going to be backwards. My little sign.
Turn your sign around. Let them see the...
Oh, it works. That actually works.
Hang on. I got you, boo. I got you.
Holy crap. It's exactly what it is. I'm holding up the sign to YouTube, and because the live is facing me, it's backwards. So I just turn it around and the marker's showing through the paper. Oh, glorious.
All right, so the way I would describe this movie is it is the perfect scrambled eggs with creme fraiche, perfect balance of salt and pepper. The only problem is whoever made it was either drunk or experimental, so they put in a little touch of garlic, and every now and then you're going to bite into some shell.
I would say it's a Little Caesars pizza with $200 a pound prime rib as the topping.
Yes.
Meticulously crafted, perfectly cooked meat on some cardboard with cheese. That's the Langoliers. But you're gonna have a good time. You're going
to enjoy yourself.
You're gonna have
either way.
I don't know if I've gotten everything out I wanted to, but watch it, man.
But at this point, the review is almost as long as the video itself.
It's longer than the movie.
It's longer than the movie.
The movie's $2.59 with credits. So,
although we got our intermission
because I peed,
and I found the music on YouTube.
I still think we're more than. But yeah, it's on YouTube right now. There's an AI upscale. That's how we watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Go watch it. Shit,
It's
man. Even if you got all the spoilers, it's for some of the filmography, and it's a few moments, but it's there.
And then write Stephen King a love letter. Be like, bro,
he's on Threads right now. He responds to a lot of people. I'm gonna do that. I'm doing that. And I'm gonna read his fucking book. I'm gonna figure out how to read again. All right. This has been the review of the Langoliers.
Wait, let me get my light. Let me get my light for your
You
sign.
can still see it.
All right, there you go. But it's clearer. It's
It
nicer
is.
with the
It
light.
really is. All right. Hey, thanks for watching, listening, and or not. And you know what?
Participating in any way you chose to do so.
We had exactly 0 viewers on the live, so I mostly do these for me. So, all right.
Right.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.